अरविन्द्य शिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरदर्शिनि दुर्मुखमर्षिनि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि किल्बिषमोषिनि घोषरते धनुजनिरोषिनि दितिशुकरोषिनि दुर्मथतोषिनि सिन्धुसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते
Hi guys, thank you for waiting. I'm about 20 minutes late because there was a power cut right on the cusp at 2 minutes left. That's when the power went away. Anyway, so thank you for joining. Today we will have to discuss the second chapter of Vivek Ramaswamy's first book, which came out in 2021, Woking. Now, of course, I bought the book because I'm a fan of his policies, etc. His great oratory skills. But what are the things you mainly know about Vivek Ramaswamy so far? If you are more on the economic right and a bit on the cultural right, you just know that he is a great proponent of these policies. He is a great advocate for these policies, and him being a Hindu, etc., a proud Hindu in a white and Christian majority country, standing up to all these people and changing their minds, etc., taking away support from Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, people who were supposed to be presidents, and no one thought that Vivek Ramaswamy will be able to give them any significant competition. Most people didn't even know that he exists. Okay. Some people did read his book Woking, and even Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida himself, read his book and implemented all the policies against gender studies, etc., critical race theory in Florida colleges and universities. But what you all don't know, what I didn't know until today afternoon and today morning, I guess, when I read the second chapter of this book, is that he has an insane philosophical and even academic grasp of capitalism, first of all. But even that's kind of expected. Okay. What's not expected is his grasp on Indian politics, Indian economics, the history of Indian politics and economics, and India's caste system. He has an insane grasp of all these things, and all that was visible in this second chapter. And he has come up with great solutions as well, for which I would like to take a little credit, because even I have been, even of course, lots of other people as well have been saying that capitalism is a great way to solve caste system and casteism issues, untouchability, whatever of it remains in India. Because and the biggest criticism we can make of our leftists and leftist academics, so-called leftist politicians, so-called anti-caste parties, is that they have mysteriously been against casteism and been against capitalism at the same time. They have been terrible at ease of business. I don't think they even have heard of the phrase ease of doing business. Okay, they are always like doing union bazi and threatening the factory manager, etc. And capitalism is the main thing that could have solved casteism. What other thing could have solved casteism? That is Hindu unity. Okay, So all the most anti-caste parties have historically been both against capitalism and Hindu unity, both of which could have solved casteism, and both of which are today done by Yogi Adityanath. Okay, I'm not saying he's some great free market guy, but he is bringing investment, economic prosperity through the hands of capitalism, more or less. Okay, which is why UP is growing and prospering at a gigantic rate. All the workers who are being kicked out from Karnataka for being North Indians and for not speaking the local language, they are saying yes, we are happy in UP. Even now, work is coming in UP only. Why should we go there and can listen to galis? Now, Vivek Ramaswamy has basically recommended the same thing with, of course, brilliant articulation and a brilliant grasp on the topic, the history of it. But only reason we are going to discuss it today from a live stream is because we are listening to it from a guy who was born in USA, from in Ohio, Cincinnati. ऐसा एक आदमी, ऐसा एक बंदा, फिर भी उसके पास कितना बढ़िया नॉलेज है कास्टिज्म का एंड द वेज टू सॉल्व इट. That's the brilliant, insane, incredible part. And even until now, everyone was basically fans of his parenting already, right? Because of his speeches that went viral from when he was 18 years old. All that showed that, yeah, this guy's parenting is off the charts. His parents must have done something incredible. And after this, reading this second chapter, I'm now even more convinced that his parenting is absolutely phenomenal. Okay. Now, before I start the live stream, before I start discussing the book, there are two other things I need to tell you all, which is I don't think India's name is going to be officially changed to Bharat in terms of a constitutional amendment of some sort. I think what the government has decided is that they are going to casually keep writing Bharat in different places. And why I'm saying that is because first of all, Narendra Modi gave an exclusive interview to Money Control today, where he kind of casually avoided or tried to hint that he's not interested in the India versus Bharat debate. He just kept addressing our country as India only. But also, Sanjeev Sanyal was brought in to debate Devdutt Patnaik on this very topic, and even Sanjeev Sanyal said that what India is Bharat. It's just that we don't use it anywhere. That was his tone. So we are not we are using Bharat. It's not like we have to mention India just because we are speaking in English. We are going to write Bharat even when we are speaking in English only. So that was his casual tone. That gives me this impression. And secondly, the link I shared of Sanjeev Sanyal's debate with Devdutt Patnaik has disappeared. They have made the video private. I don't know why. Probably because Devdutt Patnaik got his ass handed to him in the debate. I have heard that Devdutt Patnaik is kind of stupid, and a lot of people on the right hate him. I did not know he was this stupid. And these are the kind of people who piss me off the most. That fake nicety, okay, the fake politeness, like with a insane amount of smile and insane amount of great soft spoken tone, and then saying absolute bullshit. And not just saying absolute bullshit. When it comes to history, one side is always going to think the other side is saying absolute bullshit. This guy kept repeatedly accusing Sanjeev Sanyal of being of being a historian who comes from a Brahminical background. Okay, he kept insinuating, kept hinting that Sanjeev Sanyal is only propagating Brahminism and casteism in every way, and also said things like anyone having a border itself, that any in-group out-group is casteist only, and that's the sole credit of Brahmins. There is no idea, or either that's Middle Eastern ethos or that's Brahminism. So I wonder if he locks his doors at the in the night or not. So that interview was insane. I hope they put it up once again. Okay. Now let me check some comments, then I'll get into Vivek Ramaswamy. I won't be replying too much. I'll just check. कोलकाता लंदन बनेगा, yes. तो मैं इंस्टा से मैसेज पठाते गए. Okay, let me know. Let me know what's your real name in Instagram. Okay, I'll check it. Is the intro composition by you? Yes. For a person called Shrestha Gon. Her surname is Gan. I have arranged and composed many songs for her. There is a joke: when America couldn't win Afghanistan, there was a rational man who told we spent trillion, there was no mention of Islam. I rather say if America let evangelists convert Afghanistan. Love from Siliguri. Namaskar, Shubho Janmashtami. Ekhoni Krishna Janmal. Oh, yes, yes, Shubho Janmashtami. It seems you have caught cold. No, a bit of dust. Namaskar, Dada. Devdutt Patnaik similar to Romila Thapar. Yeah, and but I mean, even in front of the guy, he has absolutely zero respect and keeps saying Brahminical, Brahminical. And at one point, Sanjeev Sanyal fidgets in his chair and looks on both sides with disappointment and says that just because you repeat the word Brahminical 50 times doesn't make it a good argument. You did not come up with any counter argument. His teacher is Wendy Doniger. Watch Anomaly's interview with Vivek. Vivek answered critical questions, knives, and also his reaction on that chat on that interview. When did it come out? I was waiting for it. I've started to wear Brahmanism with pride. Nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. They were scholars, so being accused of being scholarly cannot be bad. ও দাদা তোমার ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড ওরিয়েন্টেশনটা পাল্টে গেছে তো না একই okay now I'll check out what Vivek has written. And after that, if we can find the link, we will go through the interview together as well. Okay, just let me know if you can find the interview. It happened today only. Sanjeev Sanyal and Devdutt Patnaik on Indian Express. Not Indian Express. Who's the younger guy who is the partner of Rajiv Sardesai? Okay, it's out now. You can watch that. Okay, Anomalies. Should we react to that only after discussing this book then? Okay, one other thing. Okay, then we'll go through that only. And one other thing, remember on 27th September, probably they are going to have the second Republican presidential primary debates, which we are going to live react to. It will happen at about 4 or 5 in the morning in India. So whoever is awake, join us. So this second chapter is called How I Became a Capitalist. So one of my favorite books is How I Became a Hindu. Now, How I Became a Capitalist is always also a great thing to check out. This new woke version of capitalism isn't the capitalism I fell in love with. In fact, I hardly recognize it. I fell in love with capitalism when I was very young, when I had to spend months at a time apart from it. Okay? A great way to write a sentence that I fell in love with it when I was staying away from it. So, I fell in love with capitalism when I was very young, when I had to spend months at a time apart from it, in a small village in India called Vadakancheri. But I also learned to be wary of it, okay? I learned to be aware, okay? I learned that there might be some problems with capitalism as well. A perspective he would probably not have if he was in USA. In USA, the main problem we see these days is that either people are so much in prosperity that they can't even understand what are the benefits of capitalism. They think everything good just falls from the sky. Like Thomas Sowell says that good things just magically happen and only bad things are somebody's fault. That's how leftists think. So either some people think that we don't need capitalism for good things, or some people are so engrossed in capitalism that they are not noticing what are the problems with coming out of capitalism. Otherwise, why would someone still vote for Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump after all the things that Vivek has argued for? Okay. If there was one thing my dad wanted to teach me when I was a child, it was where we came from as a family. One thing he mandated during our childhood was that we spend several weeks every summer in the village where he had been raised. Okay, so American kid coming to Kerala in the summer. My father was one of 7 children who grew up in the same house along with more than 20 other relatives. His siblings, who lived in Ohio and neighboring Indiana, went back to Vadakancheri for the summer too. So every summer in the late 1980s and early 1990s, a cadre of elementary school age kids from the Midwest would land in Vadakancheri for a few weeks. That often meant my dad had to floor his bank account in order to afford the international trip for our family of 4. It was worth it for him. Look at this. From the very first few paragraphs, you understand what a great father his father was. Okay. He made sure that every year we are going to go to India in the summer, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how much money we have to spend. 4 लोगों के लिए tickets every साल इंडिया आने का, ठीक है? Why? Because it's necessary. You'll have to see where I grew up. You'll have to see my family. You'll have to learn the local traditions and cultures to whatever extent possible. My father's childhood home in India couldn't have been more different from my hometown in Avondale, Ohio. It was a complex of three and a half interconnected houses, including my grandparents' home. There was a veranda out in front with clotheslines where our clothes were washed and dried. The air was so moist that droplets of water would stick to our skin. The ambient soundtrack of life in Vadakancheri included a cacophony of our cows moving outside and rickshaws blaring their horns as they passed. The scent of incense hung in the air from the candles that burned in the morning and evening in our prayer room. There was no dishwasher, so we often ate meals served on large banana leaves instead of plates, using our hands. The toilets appeared to be holes in the ground that we squatted over. To flush them, we filled up a cup of water and poured it down the hole as many times as it took. We used to boil water and let it cool to have something to drink. Air conditioning was only a dream, and we got a bad stomach flu at least once per trip. Now, this is the part I had shared today morning, a part I underlined. But we also learned that there's more to life than being comfortable. We heard stories about my dad from family elders that he had never told us. Okay, things about his father that even his father didn't tell his children. That maybe he thought it would be too much of a boasting. Okay, it happens, right? Someone else had to uh, abo- tell them about his father, or maybe childish, funny, hilarious stories. All of that. What a great vibe to grow up in. We visited the same village school where my dad first learned English. We learned to pray at the local temple. My cousins and I used to play hide and seek throughout the complex. Sometimes sounds like the entry of a Mirana movie, right? Sometimes we would try a makeshift version of baseball on the front veranda, where the clothes were drying and swaying in the wind, blocking our view. The service ladies didn't seem to mind that we changed their laundry schedule, but my dad definitely did. The games were even more challenging because we had to hide from him. He was irked we were being dumb American kids instead of absorbing traditional values. But we brought a new version of baseball to Vadakancheri. Avoiding my dad was just part of the game. On the surface, the absence of first world comforts was the most striking difference. But as we grew accustomed to life in India's boonies, we found it was kind of fun. The more remarkable differences were cultural. There were some ways they were immediately visible. We usually walked around inside and outside without shirts, like most of the adult men. We visited the local temples by foot in the morning and evening, and so on. At my father's behest, we spent quite a lot of the day praying. Listen to this. At my father's behest, we spent quite a lot of the day praying, just like the other Brahmins in the village. The prayers I still say today are the ones I learned in Vadakancheri. तो भाई प्रेयर करके एथिस्ट ना होके इसका इसका जिंदगी में क्या रुक गया? हार्वर्ड भी हुआ, येल भी हुआ, मिलियनेयर भी हुआ, प्रेसिडेंट भी होगा, या तो 2024 में नहीं तो 2028 में. But the strangest differences weren't visible to the untrained eye. My grandmother, whom we called Ammai, had lived in that house since she had moved there with her three sisters in the 1940s. They weren't especially wealthy, but by birth they were all Brahmins, the traditional caste of priests and teachers, the protectors of knowledge and understanding, the scholars. Look at this. Dekho, look at this understanding of the Brahmin caste. We Brahmins were the highest caste, though not the richest or most powerful. Okay, I will repeat almost every sentence that's being written here because these are very important. We Brahmins were the highest caste, though not the richest or most powerful. Okay, this is being written by a guy who was born in USA, who is not a sociologist, who is not an academic, who has not really spent his lifetime studying caste system. The holiest of us are called sannyasins and are supposed to beg for their food. Kings were below us. Richest were some Vaishyas, the commercial class, but they were only of the third caste, just above Shudras, the service caste. A Brahmin's obligation to pursue knowledge didn't come attached to money or political power. It came from his birth status. In the world of Grandma Ammai's village, It was most honorable to understand the world well, so it was obvious that Brahmins would be the highest caste. Our status as Brahmins didn't even really correspond to our jobs. My grandfather was a farm manager, my dad was an engineer, and his older brother became a doctor. But they visited the temple morning and evening, lived modestly, observed customs, and passed on their traditions to future generations. As Brahmin men, we wore a punal. I guess they call the Janeu punal. As Brahmin men, we wore a punal, a sacred string, across our body starting around age 8. Most Kerala temples required men to remove their shirts before entry, and you knew who was Brahmin and who wasn't based on who had a punal. We had people who had supported the house by providing domestic help. They weren't technically my cousins, but we treated them like relatives in many ways. For example, the old lady who cleaned the home lived only a few houses down my grandparents. We used to be scared of her as kids. She would scold us as though we were her own kids. We somehow always knew we were supposed to bow at her feet, just as we did to our grandparents. As kids, we didn't process the fact that these people who provided service to our family were in the lower caste, while we were the highest. But my family and hers knew the difference. Neither family would allow their kids to marry into the other. Money wasn't the reason for her family's difference in caste from ours. In fact, the money was entirely irrelevant. But also, what I will of course point out for any commies hopefully watching this video someday is that even though this particular woman, a service woman, was from a lower caste, she used to scold Vivek Ramaswamy as a kid, just as if she would if Vivek was her own son. Okay, Vivek was supposed to bow down at her feet. So, itna tak casteism, caste barriers had been broken down already, but they maintained it in other ways. If the villagers thought of the principles of India's caste system at all, they thought of them more as values than rules. Out of those values came beliefs, like the facts that only Brahmins could enter through the front door foyer and that lower caste people ought to go down the alleyway and enter through the side door, past the cow. Only Brahmins entered the prayer room and kitchen at certain times of day. While these sound like rules and restrictions to an American ear, to the villagers, they were just facts associated with a proper understanding of the world. I asked my father and the other elders why we Brahmins lived in different spaces and ways than the others in the village. I never got a straight answer. Kids like the son of the lady who served us could go on to get educated and make more money, but they would still be part of a different community. Seeing how much this system revolved around honor and status helped me understand how much the American system revolved around wealth. And while my father always taught me to never over prioritize the pursuit of wealth over virtue, it seemed to me that the pursuit of wealth equally by all was still preferable to a system of honor based on birth. That's when I began to fall in love with capitalism. Sure, in America it was possible for people to blindly pursue wealth above more virtuous callings in life, but because money gave some people access to status, America was a place where anyone could achieve any status no matter their birth. Something that seemed fundamentally different from the world of Vadakancheri in the 1990s. That seemed pretty cool to me. So this is the end of this small subchapter, and now another subchapter begins. Let me just check what's going on in the comment section. Well, Varna and Jati were intertwined, which needs to be separated. Also, Jivika, yeah. AIM did mention it about Vivek. Yeah. Poite in Bengali, yes. Vivek is probably a Palakkad Iyer. Yeah. India Today, okay. Uh, Varna should only be limited to acharas, but Jivika should be independent and liberalized. So, what I was afraid of is that he might not know enough about India's politics, India's history, or the caste system. And I thought that if he does become more of a significant voice in the Republican primary race, I thought that the news anchors will come after him with his caste only. He will be attacked for his caste, and there I thought Vivek will probably not have a great defense, or maybe he will prepare for it the night before. Now I'm absolutely sure that whatever they hit this guy with no matter what Modi's policies, India's policies, the Hindu caste system, जो भी बोले विवेक को, it won't matter at all. He knows this shit inside out. He's going to answer everything that's necessary. This is truly a once in a lifetime candidate they have. Now, but wait and see what his critiques of capitalism also are. As it turns out, there's nothing superior about Brahmins and certainly nothing superior about them marrying each other. Not even their sense of humor is superior. They only seemed funnier to each other because the caste system had them hang out together. It's not even true that knowledge is better than power, wealth, or service. But all of those domains can be part of a good life, and to enable that diversity, you have to allow people from different groups to associate with each other freely. Sometimes you even have to let them marry each other. Historically, the caste system, certainly the British influenced form of it, wanted to keep all groups and their provinces separate. Check this out. This is when I decided that I absolutely have to do a live stream. This one sentence about caste system is almost unknown to most people who study caste system in the country, in our country. And of course 99% of the people who are not academics but always pretend to be anti caste, even they don't know these things. Did you hear what he said? Historically, the caste system, certainly the British influenced form of it, wanted to keep all groups and their provinces separate. That proved to be a convenient way for the British to pit different groups against one another and consolidate power. Okay, this is not known by most people in India, most anti caste people in India. But he's being fair as well. But the British didn't make it up from scratch. Even according to the ancient system, everything had to be kept pure. No doubt there was something beautiful about that purity, but there was even more beauty in what it missed. What a great sentence. It may have been beautiful because of that purity, but there was even more beauty in what it missed. As a child, I understood that the American system saw the world in a radically different light. The American dream is to have it all: knowledge, power, money, and service, in no particular order, and as much of each as you want. Because America offers the hope that they can all fit together in one life, here knowledge is power and so is wealth, and power gives you the ability to serve others. Service should give you power too, especially in an efficient market. And that is what I have always thought of India's social workers or the Communist Party, SFI, these people, that they think they are an NGO and they think all political parties should be NGO, and the whole timers of the party should be the NGOs and give their lifetime service in these parties, doing jobs that should have been taken care of by the government bureaucrats or by the private sector. But the workers of the party, the small number of good people that which are there in every party, those are the people who spend their lifetimes serving the people or serving the party by doing these sorts of things. But it shouldn't have been that way, because service should give you power too, especially in an efficient market. And India is not an efficient market. It is to a certain extent now. It has never been until 1991, and not until 2014, even to a large extent, and definitely not in Bengal. Work hard, do well at one or two things, get paid, and the money can help you get the rest. Anything that even might be good, America tries to offer you. Hang out with who you want, say what you want, pray with who you want if you want, marry who you want. You and only you decide what it means to have it all. The contrast between capitalism and the caste system was striking. Living in Kerala every summer as a kid made me miss America. Capitalism was the first ideal I really loved, the first time I had ever loved a system. Capitalism brought people together, the caste system kept them apart. My dad's a liberal, and he argues that American capitalism creates a new caste system based on wealth. That's hard to deny. But that's not the goal of capitalism. Certainly not the pure form of it that I fell in love with as a kid. Capitalism is supposed to be just an economic system, not a social system. And the caste system is supposed to be the opposite. It is supposed to be a social system, not an economic system. Paradoxically, that means they both share one fundamental precept in common, which is the size of your bank account has nothing to do with your moral worth. That is common in the capitalist system as well as in the caste system. Yet over the next 30 years, it was actually American style capitalism that slowly bound the wounds opened by caste. People now regularly marry across caste lines. There's no rule about who can and can't enter a house through the front door. The lower caste guy who works at Domino's now delivers to our home in the village. Okay. The lower caste guy who works at Domino's now delivers to our home in the village, and my family tips him to show their appreciation, just as we do in America. When you eat out at Pizza Hut, you ring a large bronze bell to say thank you. When you leave, funny enough, the exact same kind of sacred bronze bell that we used to ring when we left the village temple. By allowing Indians to share goods and services with each other freely, capitalism gradually allowed them to marry whomever they wanted to as well. Capitalism, an economic system, fixed these problems with caste, a social system. With the free exchange of money and services, people could choose their own relationships with each other. No matter what caste you were born into, you could work hard, get paid, work your way up, and end up meeting a lot of different people. From there, you could find out what others needed from you and what you needed in return. An efficient market actually rewards figuring out exactly what the other groups of people want and need. So people naturally stopped segregating themselves. In capitalism, people make good money figuring out how to efficiently distribute food. There's no honor code that requires you to beg because Brahmins were supposed to beg. More than 30 years have passed since the first time I visited Vadakancheri. As the years aged me, they changed Vadakancheri too. After my wife and I got married, I took her on a trip to Vadakancheri, Apurva Tiwari, who's herself a throat surgeon. I took her on a trip to Vadakancheri to show her that a village I remembered from my childhood, to show her that village I remembered from my childhood summers. But that village was long gone. Vadakancheri and I were both matured, in some ways, and we each had a couple of new flaws. Listen to this. What a great way to write. Vadakancheri and I were both matured in some ways, and we each had a couple of new flaws. It was still a village near verdant rice paddies, but the house now had air conditioning. The soundtrack still included cows mooing, but cars had replaced the noisy rickshaws. The road was paved. There were fridges and cold bottled water in them. There were toilets that you could sit on and flush. Today, there's hardly a caste system left. And here he adds a footnote. You won't believe what the footnote is. The footnote says the main vestige of the caste system that's left is a government enforced quota system that demands that colleges, businesses, and other institutions reserve a certain number of seats for scheduled castes. He puts it under quote scheduled castes, descendants of lower castes, a system that fuels toxic identity politics in India. Can you believe what I'm saying? Can you believe what this guy has written? The presidential candidate of USA, born in USA. He's saying there are institutions that are supposed to give certain number of seats for reserved for scheduled castes who are descendants of lower castes, and this is a system that fuels toxic identity politics in India. Phenomenal. Now, today there's hardly a caste system left. People regularly marry across caste lines. I don't think the pizza or air conditioning caused it. But it was unmistakably the same force that brought pizza and air conditioning to India that had also eroded the caste system. Capitalism was one of those rare forces more powerful than birth status, and it had spread to India. Not just to the cities, but out to the boonies all the way to Vadakancheri. Not everything is better. It's still 100 degrees in Kerala, and the moisture in the air still sticks to your skin. There seem to be more mosquitoes than ever, and they still love American blood. The caste system's gone, but there are new problems. Many of the problems with capitalism are well known. For example, the unequal distribution of wealth based in part on how successful people are in the game of commercial enterprise. But the biggest problem with capitalism isn't just that it enables some people to buy more things than others. Rather, the great danger of capitalism rests in its inherent expansive quality. Capitalism has an uncanny ability to organize our society's commercial affairs better than we could have ever imagined. But it has an equally uncanny ability to extend far beyond commercial life. Like light, it will reach as far as it possibly can unless we purposefully contain its scope. Even though it is an economic system, it has the power to reorder social systems too. Our family experienced this firsthand. As consumerism extended its reach all the way from America to Vadakancheri, it quickly supplanted the historical norms of the village. While free enterprise had nearly eradicated the caste system, it also had the effect of pulling apart our once tight knit extended family. Now, that's also under threat because of capitalism. My grandmother, whom we called Ammai, had lived in that house in Vadakancheri since the 1940s, alongside her older sister, Perisammai. I don't think any of them ever paid attention to who paid for which expense. It was just something that happened. It was a Brahmin virtue to live simply. So spending money was little more than an afterthought. अच्छा हाँ चलो किसी ने पैसा दे दिया होगा. But everything changed in 2006 when my great aunt Perisammai passed away. She was the matriarch of the family and one of those rare figures who could, it seemed, contain the otherwise inevitable spread of light from one space to another. But she could only do it for so long. She was in the prayer room, lighting the candles on each of the lamps, as she had done for countless decades. One day, the flame on one of the candles lit the back of her sari, setting it ablaze. She suffered full body third-degree burns and passed away several days later. Over the next decade, things changed dramatically in Vadakancheri. The house itself was better. There was a new refrigerator. The bathrooms had been redone with those Western style toilets. When my cousins and I visited India, we got sick less frequently. I learned that Shri, who was Perisammai's granddaughter and my second cousin, was responsible for those improvements. She had emigrated from India to Europe and married into a wealthy family. She used that newfound wealth to modernize her childhood home, where the rest of the clan still lived, including my own grandmother. Okay, so Vivek Ramaswamy's father's side's grandmother also lives in that house, which was now modernized by a daughter of a brother of Vivek Ramaswamy's father. Yet there were other changes beneath the surface too. Years after Perisammai passed away, we heard that Shri's side of the family had requested that Ammai, Vivek's grandmother, move out of the house and join her own children in America. That would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. The biggest difference was the death of my great aunt Perisammai, whose sheer presence loomed large enough to bind a sprawling family together. But it would be naive to think that the spread of capitalism had nothing to do with it. Yes, it brought air conditioning and bottled water to our family home in Vadakancheri, but it also brought with it a new consciousness about who paid for what. We know these things in our families, right? For post 90s Indian kids, we know all these things have happened in some way or the other, to some degree or the other, in every family in India. My dad's side of the family was doing fine in America by that time and could have borne the costs too. But the real problem wasn't the money itself, it was the new consciousness of money within the family. Eventually, Ammai came to America, an immigrant like her children, like Vivek's father and mother. Like all immigrants, she was searching for a better life, but in a different way. She had had a good life in Vadakancheri, and now she had come to America to make one here. She has in many ways. Sri's side of the family was ultimately right that it would be good for Ammai and her kids to be together. She has 13 grandkids and 10 great grandkids, and she visits them all, doing the rounds through Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, and Kentucky. She spends weeks at a time in each place and turns it into some kind of social hub that the rest of the family drops in on. What a beautiful way to describe these things. So that shows you what a keen, beautiful way of looking at things Vivek has. He's not doing it. He's not visiting those family get-togethers just as a something. Chalo bhai, chalna hai, kya kare ab? I'm too busy, but I'll go there anyway. It's not like that. He has observed these things like a scholar, like a true scholar, and dare I say, like a Brahmin. When I see Ammai watching her grandkids play or sitting on someone's front porch in the American Midwest watching a sunset, I think about how she used to sit on her front veranda in Vadakancheri and how she would watch us play baseball as the clothes dried and the light faded. I think about how money can change family relationships and about how there are still some things money can't buy. Maybe that's the moral of my family story. That's when I first learned that capitalism often shows up where it's not supposed to, an uninvited guest in a life. Like light, it travels everywhere constantly, in all directions. Like light, it can grow things. But sometimes the light of the candle becomes a fire that sets the whole thing ablaze. Liberals know that capitalism sometimes hurts people, but they frame the issue poorly. They are too focused on how capitalism harms certain groups rather than focusing on how capitalism sometimes harms everyone by infecting other social systems like family life or even social values. Capitalism hurts all of us when it undermines democracy through the influence of lobbyists or corporate social fiats. It hurts all of us when it co opts sincerely held values like faith or feminism to quietly make money. John Rawls is one of those all time great philosophers who, if he were alive today, would still be looking in the wrong place for the dangers of capitalism. Like I say for our Indian leftist academics as well, that they're pointing the gun in the wrong direction. They hate casteism, we hate caste system. They want to do away with caste based discrimination. I want to do away with it as well. But they are pointing the gun in the wrong direction. And therefore, they are not solving it for 70 years, 80 years. Dangers of capitalism would still be looking out, the people like them would still be looking out in the wrong place for the dangers of capitalism. He argued, John Rawls, that justice was a matter of fairness and that in a system agreed to by all under fair conditions, all would agree that whoever was left with the short end of the stick would still do as well as possible. So Rawls would wonder who the worst off were in American capitalism. He would want to make sure they were still doing pretty well and that they weren't being exploited by the rest of us. Who are the worst off then? Who has fared poorly in America? And who are the people who have been given the least chance to do well? Is it the unemployed? Is it the homeless or the disabled? The elderly or maybe the poor? Are people of color the worst off? Which people of color? Women? Jobless white men in the Rust Belt? Wounded veterans? Wayfaring beggars? The mentally ill? Do the worst of all stand at the intersections of these groups? Is that what intersectionality means? It's a common question about capitalism and one that I've struggled with too. To me, the question, who are the worst off, is actually the wrong question to ask because it's nearly impossible to answer. There are many good things in life and many ways to lack them. Okay, what a great line. There are many good things in life and many ways to lack them. And there's no fact of the matter about whether a poor white man is or isn't worse off than a rich black woman. Today, like the British in colonial India, we unnecessarily pit groups against each other when we ask who the worst off are, instead of asking how capitalism sometimes complicates things for everyone. Grandma Ammai probably wouldn't be counted among the worst off. She's made a good life here. We are a bit more distant from the other side of the family than we used to be, but we have made amends with them. As for our side of the family, we are closer than ever. Ammai visits Vadakancheri for a couple of months a year, escaping Ohio's cold winters for Kerala's warmth. She's not the worst off, but I still wish the spread of capitalism to Vadakancheri had treated her better. I used to be angry at Sri. Now he's giving out personal anecdotes. I used to be angry at Sri. I thought of the way I had appreciated the fridge, the toilets, and the stoves and never knew they would come with a cost. But they had come at an actual cost. Someone had to quite literally pay for them. Meanwhile, my side of the family was sitting blissfully unaware in American suburbia, acting like Vadakancheri was still in the idyllic 1990s and like money didn't matter to us Brahmins. Okay, incredible, right? This is insane amounts of observation and secrets that he's observing and letting us know, and things that we know has happened in some magnitude or the other in our families as well. I'll read this paragraph once again. I used to be angry at Sri. I thought of the way I had appreciated the fridge, the toilets, and the stoves, and never knew they would come with a cost. But they had come at an actual cost. Someone had to quite literally pay for them. Meanwhile, my side of the family was sitting blissfully unaware in American suburbia, acting like Vadakancheri was still in the idyllic 1990s and like money didn't matter to us Brahmins. Over time, I came to think my side of the family was in the wrong too. Capitalism had come to India, even to Kerala, and it brought changes we didn't expect. It changed the norms. I was mad at Sri because I thought she was violating Vadakancheri's old norms. But in reality, that code had changed long ago. My dad and his siblings in the American Midwest just hadn't woken up to the reality that Vadakancheri in 2015 was fundamentally different from Vadakancheri in the 1990s. In the new capitalist world, unlike in the old system, it was normal to expect that children would give financial support to their own parents. Shri had been fixing up the house that her dad lived in. She had been doing that for years, mixing her sweat and labor with it, making it more and more a product of her efforts. In the new system, it was perfectly normal for her side of the family to feel like they should be the ones living in the house. Back in the 90s, the fact that my grandmother Amma had lived in the house for so long would have been a powerful justification for her to continue to stay there. Tradition trumped capitalism. But in modern Vadakancheri, the relevant fact is who invested in the home. So, who really owns the house? Nowadays, the answer is no different in Vadakancheri than in Ohio, which is whoever paid for it. Capitalism didn't just reorder the caste system in India, it changed religion too. In the 1990s, we used to make pilgrimages to temples across India. We would wait in line with the other devotees, often for a day or longer, waiting our turn for a few seconds before the deity. We used to get our heads shaved to the scalp while waiting in line. Like any spoiled American brat, I dutifully whined about it to my parents. Secretly, it was fun. When my family visited again in 2011, we didn't do that anymore. When we visited big temples, we made a donation at the front and avoided waiting in line with the other devotees. We took a private car instead of a rickety bus. Our pilgrimages became more efficient. At Tirupati, a sort of Hindu Mecca in southern India, there's a ticket based system. Everyone gets in if they wait long enough. But if you pay, you can shorten the wait. If you pay a lot, you can skip the line altogether. And if you pay a ton, you get to do a special ritual right in front of the deity. You just select your ticket at the kiosk. That's what's supposed to happen at Disney World, not a temple. It betrayed my understanding of what prayer was supposed to be about. What's the moral of the story? I learned two lessons. First, capitalism doesn't have an on and off switch. Capitalism eroded the caste system in India, but it also dissolved the subtle bonds that held my Vadakancheri family together for generations. My dad no longer has to run his bank account to zero to make a family trip to India. But capitalism had also caused my parents to worry in the 1990s when my dad, who under Jack Welch's ruthless tenure at General Electric, faced layoff risks every day while raising two kids in a foreign land. Those realities were inseparable from one another. Capitalism thrives on individualism and picks apart institutions built on collective identity. That's just the nature of capitalism. Maybe that's a good thing when it tears down institutions like caste, but it also tears down other communal institutions that are worth preserving. And that's my second lesson. I love capitalism, but I love other things too, like family and religion and democracy. In order to save those things, we need to protect them from being infected by capitalism. I shouldn't be able to buy a fast pass at Tirupati any more than I should be able to buy extra votes in a democracy, which is why I'm saying there is a way to do capitalism and to save Dev Bhumi. I will take a short break from reading this a bit. I'll drink a little bit of water, but also remind you guys that if Kushal Mehra, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, they have really read this book and they understand and agree with these things, and then they criticize Jesai Deepak or his book, saying that it sounds like the Communist Manifesto. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Okay, I absolutely love and respect those people, both Abhijit Iyer Mitra and Kushal Mehra. But this is what Jesai Deepak has been saying. Why we need a decolonized approach to looking at things, and also how we can do things without absolutely destroying our religious, cultural norms, institutions, etc. Okay. Just because you're a pro market free market libertarian guy doesn't mean you absolutely destroy Himachal Pradesh or Uttarakhand. Okay, we have to come up with a middle ground. Doesn't mean we become tree huggers and kill capitalism in the entire country, but doesn't mean we destroy those mountains as well. Okay, there has to be a middle ground. Now a libertarian would probably argue that there is a there should be some way to incentivize it. How the fuck are you going to economically incentivize devotion to a god? Okay, so there has to be something other than capitalism there. So okay, let me drink water now. But if someone understands what Vivek is saying here and agrees with it, but then hates India, that is Bharat, or Jesai Deepak, or decoloniality, then that's pretty problematic. So yet that's exactly what stakeholder capitalism is about. In order to save those things, we need to, and that's my second lesson. I love capitalism, but I love other things too, like family and religion and democracy. In order to save those things, we need to protect them from being infected by capitalism. I shouldn't be able to buy a fast pass at Tirupati any more than I should be able to buy extra votes in a democracy. Yet that's exactly what stakeholder capitalism is about. स्टेक कैपिटलिज्म मीनिंग समथिंग अदर देन शेयर होल्डर कैपिटलिज्म. ओके, स्टेक होल्डर कैपिटलिज्म नाम दिया गया है इस चीज को, थिंग्स लाइक DEI ESG, which is that companies or random activists will conjure up out of their minds, out of the blue, who is a stakeholder. Okay, now who is a stakeholder? The consumer, the people who are not investors in the particular company, people who are not direct beneficiaries of the products of the company or the shares of the company, people who just live and exist in the world, are all stakeholders apparently in every particular company. So the stakeholder capitalism means prioritizing their interests, whatever they think, whatever the activists or the company bosses think is the interest of the stakeholders, lyingly or truthfully, that is more important than actually the shareholders of the company. Stakeholder capitalism over shareholder capitalism. So stakeholder capitalism pretends to be a milder form of capitalism, but it's actually capitalism gone wild. It encourages capitalism's winners to wield greater power in our democracy. Ordinary Americans who vote at the ballot box each November are like the poor devotees who wait in the long line at the temple. Meanwhile, CEOs and investors issuing moral fiats from Davos, World Economic Forum, are the rich devotees who get to cut the line. Liberals think the answer is to change capitalism by putting words like stakeholder or conscious or environmental, social, and governance in front of it, ESG. For their part, classical conservatives think the answer is to ignore the problem and recite a Milton Friedman or Ronald Reagan quote, failing to recognize that, as Dorothy might have said to Toto, we are not in 1980 anymore. Instead, we are in a postmodern Oz where the wizard is no longer just big government. It's a new hybrid of big business and big government, of capitalism and democracy. Abraham Lincoln said 80 years ago, quote, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. We must think anew. End quote. We would do well to heed his wisdom. The solution to today's new dilemma isn't to change capitalism as Democrats try to, but neither is it to ignore the inherently invasive qualities of capitalism, as many Republicans are prone to do, which is why libertarians are absolutely irrelevant in Indian politics. Rather, it's to prevent capitalism from changing everything else. This is what I'm saying. This is what more or less what Desai Deepak is saying. This is what Abhijit Ayar Mitra says, that it sounds like the Communist Manifesto. Okay. It's to prevent capitalism from changing everything else. It's not about changing capitalism. Rather, it's to prevent capitalism from changing everything else by building protective walls around things that we cherish most, like democracy. America was built on the idea of separating powers between different institutional spheres to protect people. Our constitution ordains the separation of power between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches, between federal and state government, between church and state. As Americans, we now need to separate the powers of capitalism from the workings of democracy. To keep them alive, we need to keep them apart. Okay, to keep them alive, to keep both democracy, government, and capitalism alive, all of them need to need to be kept apart from each other. In order to do that, we must first understand what the modern corporation is supposed to be and what it's not. Then he goes on to the next chapter. This is the end of this particular chapter. This is phenomenal work, right? Now let me check some comments, and then I will discuss. Let me see. I'll see if that the debate between Sanjeev Sanyal and Devdutt Patnaik has arrived or not, has been uploaded or not. And also, I will read out to you an article from Wire, an article by a libertarian. Okay, and you will again see how irrelevant that is. I hate the VIP darshan system too. Well, there is nothing sacrosanct at all if we want to speak from scientific perspective. Hmm. Birth age or lineage varna system not a good concept. Individualism is very important for governance perspective. Kushal criticized decoloniality on that realm. Mm, yeah, because individualism. Okay, we can't get into that debate today. But individualism, what people mean by individualism, is not very clear. I don't think most people who I think most people who talk about individualism over group rights actually don't understand what individualism is, or how it's propagated, and what situation exactly is individualism, and where we are actually observing groupism, or the importance of groupism. Look at the tweets written by AIM on decolonization in context of India versus Bharat debate. Where are they? Long back. That is the issue, because if you go into basics, then you'll have to give some space to Varna again and then start over again. It is not about group rights, but he has a hard time understanding the importance of decolonization. Capitalism doesn't recognize immaterial sacrosanct. Kushal has hard time understanding this group rights, temple tradition, etc. Vivek is talking about reconciliation between capitalism and collective socio-cultural institutions like family. Yes, agree. But Kushal's group rights versus individual rights argument was not wrong. Um, okay, since it's here again, group rights versus individual rights is not that of a significant, important, urgent debate as we think it is. Okay, because first of all, we have never had much of individualism in India in the first place. Okay, in India has kind of being a pretty group oriented society itself. It's not a gigantic one large group, but there are different groups everywhere based on jati, varna, sampradaya, etc., everything. And then language, region, it's everything. People have always in India operated on based on those things. And after socialism arrived, there was even less amounts of individualism. All the individualism we know has come in India after 1990s, right? Now what we are seeing with that is that we are supposed to automatically become atheists, and then make way for a vulnerability and a void which will be filled up by the pattharbaz, because neither are they educated, nor are they taking part in capitalism, nor are they giving up their religious customs. Now what people think when they say they are appreciating individualism, or they give examples of individualism, is the American system, where people individually do similar things. So it's not really a significant thing that they're talking about. Okay, there's no arbitrarily fascinating real life example of individualism they are bringing to you, which would convince you that individualism is absolutely phenomenally different or better than a group, than a group identity. Of course, I am not very pro group identity. I am against caste based discrimination or birth based caste system. But what they think individualism is not exactly what happens in USA. America, where it's fundamentally focuses on individualism. There, people individually do similar things. They watch baseball or football on the weekends. They put up an American flag on the backyard or on the balcony. They eat steak. They go hunting, or they do all nationalist kind of things that were conventionally American. So when people individually have a lot of things in their customs common, inside that framework, individualism can flourish. Individualism does not flourish in a vacuum. Okay, like वो famous quote, open societies and its enemies. Okay, open society का enemies को तो रोकना होगा. Why? Because there's a framework where the open society can thrive. Open society does not mean ether, akasha, or just the world in general. An open society is maintained in a closed framework. That's what blind individualists or libertarians of India and in USA don't understand. It works. You can be individualistic. For example, you can have your own Ishta Devta only after you have your Kula Devta and your Grama Devta. And even on scriptural theory, Hinduism really does not need to be taught how to do individualism. It's based on your connection with your God, etc. Okay, your prayers, your connections, everything, your conversations with God. So there, it always encourages individualism anyway, and neither does it call for a community based call for action कि जाके non believer को उड़ा दो. So there is a healthy balance in Hinduism itself. But what the modern individualism wala proponent is saying is that either none of these things matter or these things will happen anyway magically, even if we focus everything on individualism. No, that individualism that you are noticing in France or in USA is because they have the framework, larger superstructure in place inside which people are being as individualistic as possible. France is very free and individualistic, right? In France, there is more racism than USA. Ask any black person. Francis Ngannou, former UFC heavyweight fighter. He is from Senegal or some remote African country, okay, Cameroon probably. He lived in on the footpaths of France for a while. He says the stares I got in the streets of Paris is nothing like what I've experienced in America, and he now lives in LA. And up until 5 or 10 years back, vegans were looked upon as absolute traitors to the country because meat eating is such a part of the custom in France. Okay, now there inside these societies, and then in USA, the examples I gave, having a flag in front of your house, watching football on the weekends, having a barbecue with your neighbors, when these common social customs, cultural customs are in place, or going to the church on the Sunday morning, these systems are in place. Inside that, they are doing their individualism, which we can also do. But the problem with our situation is that we are losing all of these regular customs that we grew up with. तो अगर कुछ भी कंजर्व नहीं होगा, कुछ भी सोसाइटी नहीं रहेगा, कुछ भी सोशल कल्चरल नॉर्म्स नहीं रहेगा, नॉर्म्स छोड़ो, वैल्यूज नहीं रहेगा, ट्रेडिशंस नहीं रहेगा, कस्टम्स नहीं रहेगा, उसके अंदर इंडिविजुअलिज्म नहीं होगा, उसके अंदर सिर्फ पत्थरबाजी होगा. Out of context profile or pro life or pro choice? Pro life. Sorry for the spelling mistake, I'm just voice searching. I would have been for antinatalism if the Pattharbaz threat wasn't there. No, I wouldn't be in favor of antinatalism. What are Patharva? I may be mishearing what you said. I said Pattharbaz, people who throw stones. I want Vivek to be Prime Minister of India now. No, he won't. He won't. He will never win in India. What is individualism according to you? You being able to think beyond your group and creating your own destiny, creating your own choice, creating your own lifestyle. I agree with one thing, that practicing individualism is very easy for homogeneous societies. Exactly. थोड़ा बहुत homogeneity होगा, उसके अंदर individualism होगा. Exactly. Great points put forth by you. Thank you. For individualism versus group identity. Yes. These days I'm seeing people do helicopter darshan of Vaishno Devi, where literally they don't walk more than 500 meters to reach main temple when you are supposed to cross a whole mountain. What a scam. Okay. How God can spend more time with those with more money and less with others. We should stick to the same logic that it should be hard to reach Himalayan temples, as the effort is what matters in the end. It does, yes. So that individualism is possible only in a homogeneous society. Yes. And now homogeneous society doesn't mean Saudi Arabia, but more or less homogeneous society. There has to be some ounce of homogeneity. Zero homogeneity se nahi hoga individualism. Nina, the whole purpose of pilgrimage is defeated. Yes. What is libertarianism and liberalism difference? Oh, there's huge difference. Liberalism, it's not really opposed to each other. A libertarianism might also be a liberal culturally, but a liberal might not be libertarian. Okay. So liberalism is about freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of different ideas interacting with each other and debating. Libertarianism is more specific, that the government has zero or almost no role to play in the society. Liberalism would say that that the government has to take care that the liberal society is maintained. Libertarianism would say that the government is not important, or should not even exist, because the market or people and their economic interactions with each other can take care of this freedom like situation anyway. Many people try to compare India and America, which is wrong. Companies in India has 20% Muslim rather than America has 6% non-Judeo-Christian background. Yes. Is Indian joint family structure better than Western nuclear family? In theory only, I would say yes, but I don't think the joint families have come up with great results in the last few decades. Maybe that's because of a lot of it is because of partition, the stresses that come from partition, the insane poverty that India has faced. Okay, the middle classes, lower classes, up until 1991, all that has destroyed a lot of humanity in Indians. So maybe because of that, I'm giving a defense first and then criticizing. Joint family has generally meant in India family quarrels, वो land को लेके बवाल, someone backstabbing each other. Those are the things commonly associated with joint families. So it's hard to argue in favor of joint family these days. But ideally, yes, it would be. Someone needs to hit a reset button in India, in society, in Indian society. Joint family is not a core belief in Indian systems. Varnashrama are more important. Yes, joint family is more of a thing that has evolved. That used to happen anyway. Okay, I agree with you on this. What did he say? I disagree a bit on. I disagree a bit with the temple darshan. For example, people with disabilities and old people can be given those facilities, but the rest healthy people should take darshan normally. Yeah, absolutely. Because remember, in every Hindu text, it comes back to saying, do whatever is according to your own ability. Now, who decides your own ability? You decide. It's completely on you. Here is the individualism that's encouraged in you. You be honest with yourself and do what is necessary. Do whatever amount of dan you want to give, dakshina, and whatever amount of ritual you want to follow based on your capability. You know what your capability is. No one knows better than you what your capability is. Americans have a prerequisite overlapping collective/group identity, which they constitutionally embrace the Second Amendment. You literally can't even be an American if you don't believe it. Yes, their constitution is their Bible, is their ethos. Okay, this is why I disagree with Vivek actually when he says that USA America was founded on Judeo-Christian values. No, it was not founded on Judeo-Christian values. It was founded on their constitution. Their constitution may be inspired from Judeo-Christian Enlightenment era values, but it's not just Judeo-Christian values. Judeo-Christian values और भी बहुत जगह पे है, क्या उखाड़ लिया है? American Constitution is completely different. It's a work of philosophy and political science. That book is what has created the American society. And also Second Amendment is not really uh, is given much importance by even the stupid people who defend the First Amendment. The First Amendment is of America, exists and goes on better than every country in the world because there is the Second Amendment. Their free speech is existent because of their right to guns, right to own guns freely. Dhruv Rathi always tries to compare India with Scandinavian society, and Kushal Mehra always tries to compare India with America and Canada, but he's an intelligent. Yeah, he doesn't do it. I mean, he's not that stupid that he will just think India is America today, but he would like to be a little more like America. And whatever is good about America, even I would like to have that in India. But keeping in mind whatever good thing is happening in America, why are those things happening? You can't just magically pray for those good things to come to India. Though the good things about America are happening for very specific reasons. Their individualism happens because there is some cultural homogeneity, even racial homogeneity, religious homogeneity. Okay, their intellectualism, their academic rigor, their let's say coming up with great pieces of art, etc. Over the last few years, making phenomenal advances in even thinking. All that has come because of free speech. Free speech happens because of gun rights, and their hardworking nature, that comes because of capitalism. Almost everything they do in the field of art is not matched in India, except maybe playing classical music, Indian classical music. In everything else, Indians always seem to be catching up to Americans. It was founded on enlightenment, which only came when people rejected Catholic Church and so-called Judeo-Christian values. Yeah, well said. Say Krishna Bhagwan did not explain it, since that is not a text to know about Varna. Okay. Well, it should be called Christo-pagan values. Yeah, pretty much. American Constitution and Western Enlightenment is also a result of pagan Greek and Roman philosophies like the goddess Liberta statue. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Greek influence is huge. Okay. Now I'll just check out this I'll show you this article written by a libertarian on the Wire. Okay. Yeah, maybe he has to make some adjustments at least. So you all have heard of the Swatantra Party, right? This is someone writing about the Swatantra Party, and that's being promoted on the Wire, which is a very left wing portal in India. But they are obviously promoting it because they think at least it's a counter to this problematic Hindu fascism that's going on. But see how still out of touch libertarians in India are. How to present? Hmm. So the article is just uploaded today only. It's called "What the Rise of Swatantra Party Says About the Possibilities of Indian Politics." Projects like Swatantra Party can help us imagine alternative possibilities and solidarities. Okay, अब solidarity मरवा रहा है libertarians के साथ. भोसरी के जब पावर में आएगा leftist, तब आके सबसे पहले libertarians का गाड़ मारेगा. Solidarity to check the worst excesses of the present, even if they stand far apart from our utopias. Okay, this article is written by Aditya Balasubramaniam. It's not really an article, it's an excerpt from his new book. Economic liberalization and the ascent of Hindu nationalism have characterized Indian politics and economy since the 1990s. A wave of anti-incumbency took down the Congress-led United UPA coalition government in 2014. The verdict brought the BJP a majority in the Lok Sabha on the back of a campaign targeting the corruption of the ruling party. It is in this context that the Swatantra Party of 1959 to 74, long forgotten, has returned to public memory. Swatantra Party was a truly libertarian and freedom of speech, all the freedom kind of individualism kind of oriented party in India. Calls for the party's revival have been made by everyone from Amartya Sen to Ramchandra Guha. All the commies are asking for a libertarian party to come back. Okay, who do they think they are fooling? Of course, they are fooling some people. While the two have disagreed on the manner in which one may appropriate India's past, both are committed to religious pluralism and have unambiguously condemned the BJP on grounds of majoritarian ideology and practice. Okay, majoritarian ideology and practice नहीं होगा तो क्या होगा लिबर्टेरियनिज्म में? लिबर्टेरियनिज्म अगर आइडियली सोसाइटी लिबर्टेरियन होगा तो वहां पे मेजोरिटेरियनिज्म नहीं होगा. आइडियली लिबर्टेरियन सोसाइटी में आके माइनॉरिटी राइट्स के नाम पे हम 5,000 करोड़ का मद्रासा एजुकेशन का बजट बनाएंगे. वहां पे तो मेजोरिटेरियनिज्म ही तो होगा. In a public address, Amartya Sen expressed his wish that the Swatantra Party would be revived, who is, by the way, a Trinamool supporter now. Ramchandra Guha has asked whether India has any conservative intellectuals to speak of and has pointed to Sri Rajagopalachari as a worthy model for a rejuvenated Indian conservatism. Okay. Now, what he just said about Ramchandra Guha is absolutely pissing me off. Ramchandra Guha, when he said that, where are the right-wing intellectuals? He said this, I think, in 2015 or 16, right before Sanjeev Sanyal, Desai Deepak, Vikram Sampath started writing these books. And now we have a plethora of conservative intellectuals speaking in favor of conservatism. Not that we have enough voices in favor of economic right-wing, but even then we have some. Rajiv Mantri and Harsh Madhusudan's books, Sanjeev Sanyal, etc. But what's pissing me off more is that Ramchandra Guha, people like him, seem to not know that there existed a person called Sitaram Goel. The biggest guilt we share collectively today in India is that we let a person like Sitaram Goel disappear into obscurity. Everyone who has not read Sitaram Goel has no idea what kind of brilliance we missed. He should have been celebrated in society. He should have written countless books. He already wrote countless books anyway, and they should have been taught in schools and universities. He should have been a mainstream person. His articles should have been thronging the newspapers all day. So for some reason, this libertarian is talking about a quote from Ramchandra Guha from about a decade back. So Guha has asked whether India has any conservative intellectuals to speak of. Huh? The Wire also is pretending like there is no conservative intellectual in India. Though neither would join such a party or even vote for it, they believe that it could help protect democratic institutions. See, खुद का चुतियापा already openly बोल दिया. Okay. Ramchandra Guha, Amartya Sen agree that they wouldn't join this Swatantra party, but they would help in checking BJP basically, or any party ideally in a hypothetical situation that takes care of the majoritarian views. Okay, उसके उसका चेक के तौर पे एक स्वतंत्र पार्टी चाहिए for just using them as a toy, not because they believe in those values at all. This is the problem with libertarians, that they get fooled by these people. Why is a libertarian even, I mean, okay, ठीक है, उसका book का promotion हो रहा है, ठीक है, but how, look how sinister the Wire is. They are promoting these things blatantly when they know that they everything that libertarian stands for, the Wire opposes. Though neither would join. Okay. Free economy and the Swatantra Party came to life after India won freedom from British Raj, once the consensus forged among anti-colonial nationalists of diverse persuasions broke down. By the end of the 1950s, new economic interests had emerged, and the Nehruvian model of planned developmentalism encountered roadblocks. As India's literate public expanded in size, ideological entrepreneurs representing various causes across India's urban spaces came together to critique Indian political economy and economic policy during the second plan period. Okay, now what would Amartya Sen or Ramchandra Guha say about these periods? They would say it was fucking heaven. पूरा पूरा मिठाई का बारिश हो रहा था ऊपर से पूरा 1947 से 1991 तक, और 1991 में भी कांग्रेस ने जो कुछ भी किया उसके लिए भी क्रेडिट भी चाहिए, गला दबाने के लिए भी क्रेडिट चाहिए, और गले से हाथ उठाने के लिए भी क्रेडिट चाहिए. They drew upon Cold War era discourses of neoliberalism and tried to reconcile them with India's history and current conditions. Interacting in associations and writing in periodicals, they threshed out their own common sense ideas to help make the economy the new domain for debate on the nation. Their free economy offered an ideological foundation for Indian conservative politics to develop in a distinctively mid 20th century. From that blended an anti communism, which invoked the fear of totalitarianism with advocacy of unfettered commercial exchange and the defense of property. Situated in, so life, protecting life, liberty, and property is the only job of the government. That's the American view. Situated in distinct contexts of region, language, caste, and political economy, the keyword free economy took on multiple meanings as it circulated, moving across metropole and mofussil alike. Most clearly, it meant opposition to the socialistic pattern of society, which is loved by Ramchandra Guha, Amartya Sen, and The Wire, which Rajagopalachari dubbed Permit and License Raj. At the time, no other party explicitly disavowed the ruling party's socio-economic objectives. Free economy could also mean N.G. Ranga's self-employed economy of peasants, Masani's country of free enterprisers. It could be to those Indians who took it upon themselves to write to the Swatantra leadership a rhetoric for the expression of economic resentment. Of course, free for some meant unfree for others. The unspoken dimensions of the free economy discourses point to a patriarchal household of division of labor, patterns of low caste exploitation, and not much freedom for the woman. Free economy's ambiguity allowed it to serve as a point of consensus, agreed upon by diverse figures, whose social commitments ranged from cosmopolitan individualism to a parochial family orientation. The lowest common denominator of the varying visions of free economy were a decentralized economy with strong private property rights, which prioritized small industry and embraced agriculture. An anti-statism rather than anarchism pervaded these visions of the Swatantra Party, which is absolutely opposed by Amartya Sen, Ramchandra Guha, The Wire. The state would avoid its own commercial activity in such an economy and create a supportive environment for private economic activity when necessary. It would not occupy the commanding heights of the economy. The partisans of free economy interacted with libertarians and neoliberals in the Western world, finding occasional overlap in their concerns. In fact, the content of their formulations shared more with those of American individualist anarchists than neoliberals. Indian protagonists engaged more with the polemical content of neoliberal utterances rather than theories of institutional design. They appropriated elements of these discourses for their political aims as a layering over of their own economic ideas to respond to official Indian discourses on economy. This helped them wage a battle of ideas against the threat of communism. This is the author. Free economy became relevant for India's democracy as a platform for a project that this book has described as opposition politics embodied by the Swatantra Party. This was at one level an idea of an economically conservative party to balance out India's one footed democracy, imagined most coherently by Rajagopalachari by tracing antecedents in the Indian libertarian. Rajagopalachari's stature and appeals to dharma and ordered progress played a crucial role in attracting interests for this project across a range of political actors. Next, opposition politics rejected the anti-politics of development. Okay, anti-politics of development. This is very important. I mean, things we agree with. It involved disseminating free economy in Indian language publics and attaching it to a concrete political project. As they entered the world of party politics and elections, Swatantra's leadership rewrote free economy for a middle class, rights bearing citizen. To win popular support, the party tapped into a vein of discontent around issues such as inflation and taxation to establish itself as an alternative political player at the all India level. But how could they? क्योंकि स्कूल में तो भोसड़ी के कार्ल मार्क्स पढ़ाया जा रहा है. इन्फ्लेशन होता है किस लिए? तुम्हारा पॉवर्टी हो रहा है किस लिए? बेकारी हो रहा है, बेरोजगारी हो रहा है किस लिए? उसका जो आंसर है लोगों के दिमाग में, वही तो पूरा 180 डिग्रीज ऑपोजिट है. तो स्वतंत्र पार्टी कैंपेन करके क्या करता? सिलेबस में तो पूरा चुतियापा भर दिया. It provided an economic education for voters from the lettered public and managed to mount what was at the time the largest organized political challenge to the Congress. As it did so, it drew on antecedent practices, most of them associated with the nationalist movement. These ranged from propaganda to mass protest. These efforts quoted responses that showed how, in certain quarters, people understood opposition to the Congress as a forum for claim making and expression. Finally, opposition politics meant using India's institutional political machinery to forge coalitions and fight for free economy from elected office. Swatantra mobilized sections of the populace and used India's political institutions to provide checks and balances to the party in power before the elections of 1971 swept it away. Democracy is too often invoked to signify not merely a procedure of rule but also a set of values, freedom, rights, and progress among them. This conflation can mislead us and compromise our understanding of how distinct projects of democracy have emerged and unfolded. In India, the introduction of democracy before industrialization or the advent of mass literacy could mean that elections merely turned feudal relationships converted into legislative seats. Exactly what happened. No better example exists than the Maharani Gayatri Devi's thumping victories under the Swatantra Party banner. At the same time, democracy could carry the promise of emancipation for the masses and mean unprecedented empowerment for historically disadvantaged groups like Dalits. Across the world, the recent rise of ethno-majoritarianism regimes has taken place in both democratic and undemocratic fashion. पहली बात है, कहां कहां पे ethno majoritarian regimes recent times में उठा है. What is he talking about? Either he's talking about Bolsonaro in Brazil or Trump. I don't know much about Brazilian politics, but Trump's movement is not an ethno-majoritarian regime. It may be a majoritarian regime. Why are black people's votes increasing for Trump every day? Black conservatives का YouTube channel भर गया black conservatives से. Only after Trump came to power. ये है ethno-majoritarianism. और कहां का एग्जांपल दिया जा रहा है यहाँ पे? ethno-majoritarianism जहां है वहां 5000 2000 साल से है, 1400 साल से है. सऊदी अरेबिया, अफगानिस्तान इज ethno-majoritarian, it's still ethno-majoritarian. ये recent rise of ethno-majoritarianism क्या है? Or he's talking about India as well. India is ethno-majoritarian. This insanely low understanding of culture, religion, society, race, while having great understanding of economics. This is the kind of specialization that leads libertarians who identify as libertarians to be absolutely fucking irrelevant in India. This is why their great ideas in economics doesn't translate to the real life in India. India is a peculiar case of the post-colonial society in which this process has taken place electorally. Okay, so he's saying India has become also ethno majoritarian, but it has happened electorally. अगर बीजेपी को एथनो मेजोरिटेरियन लगे, अगर कोई बोले बीजेपी एथनो मेजोरिटेरियन है, तो उसका बाकी कुछ चीज कैसे हम सीरियसली लेंगे? तो बाकी लोग बोलेंगे यार तुम्हारा मारो साले गोली, तुम्हारा लिबर्टेरियनिज्म का माँ का, क्योंकि वो तो बीजेपी का उत्थान को बोल रहा है एथनो मेजोरिटेरियनिज्म. Consistently peaceful transfers of power have taken place between regimes for 7 decades, but the Indian example also points to the risks that endure even after procedural democracy becomes ingrained in the post colony. Projects like Swatantras can help us imagine alternative possibilities and solidarities to check the worst excesses of the present. Worst excesses of the present, okay? 3,000 crore madrasa education budget in center and 5,166 crore madrasa education budget in West Bengal. That's ethno-vegetarianism state going on in India. Projects like Swatantras can help us imagine alternative possibilities and solidarities to check the worst excesses of the present, even if they stand far apart from our utopias. Accepted with permission toward a free economy, Swatantra and Opposition Politics in Democracy, India by Aditya Balasubramaniam. What a fucking irrelevant guy. Okay, now we will check the debate between Sanjeev Sanyal and Devdutt Patnaik, which is absolutely fucking insane. You'll lose a few IQ points by listening to Devdutt Patnaik here. I can't believe, I never knew he is this stupid or this evil basically. He says nice things with a big smile and keeps saying Sanjeev Sanyal is a casteist historian. Or he even says, oh, that's history of a politician. मुंह पे संजीव सन्याल के बोल रहा है तुम कास्टिस्ट हो और तुम पॉलिटिशियन हो. हाँ मिल गया. 1 घंटे बाद फिर से अपलोड किया क्यों? ओके, बिफोर दैट लेट मी जस्ट चेक सम कमेंट्स एज वेल. बहुत सारे कमेंट्स आ गए हैं. Rajaji couldn't do shit in his own state, also cowered down to Periyar. Swatantra Party couldn't do shit in his home state. Yeah, exactly. Because of this kind of stupidity. Abhay, yes, it has. I mean, look at the way how they praise Periyar. I don't take him seriously. Things like decolonization, people criticizing BJP for not being Hindu enough, being far right. God dang को reply दिया जा रहा है. God dang बोला, Abhay, most Charvakas are like that. They take material pleasure as the most important thing. I can agree with criticism in the form of you don't believe in this faith, but insulting Hindu Dharma is yeah, basically. It is Sitaram Goel who said that BJP will turn into Congress and Congress will turn into Muslim League. Yes, and see how right he was almost. There are ills of free economy. Government regulations are important. If you allow the private company to go woke, you can't penalize them if the state has no power. DeSantis Disney case, for example. Now, I would counter you by saying that when someone says libertarianism, it's of course a spectrum of how much government power we are talking about. Okay, just because someone says libertarianism or defends libertarianism or Milton Friedman, Thomas Well doesn't immediately directly go to anarcho-capitalism. Okay, in the same way as I'll have to be fair to leftists now. If someone says they are socialist or is looking for a bit of higher taxes, doesn't mean they are anarcho-syndicalists like Noam Chomsky now. Okay, so there are degrees to this. So what you are saying that the state is important, I will absolutely agree with that. I'm mainly a Chanakyan economics guy who says that be very very careful and be very suspicious of government employees, because just like how a fish drinks water, you'll never understand, you'll never find out. In the same way, you'll never it's hard to understand when a government employee steals money. So be very wary of that. But also state servopari. State will create a framework inside which free market economics will live. Just like Hindu society, Sanatan Dharmic society has to stay inside which we can do individualism and acceptance, tolerance, anything. These Marxists are chameleons in various colors like liberal, libertarian, etc. against Hindutva. No, libertarians are pretty much against Marxism, but how can someone be this blind with culture and society? But somehow all his books are on BJP Digital Library, maybe secret admirers. Whose books? Sitaram Goel. Yeah. Sitaram Goel. I bought Sitaram Goel's books from Vishwa Hindu Parishad bookstall in Kolkata Book Fair, who he has criticized heavily in the book How I Became a Hindu itself. So I guess they are just good accepting people. They just want to confuse the right wing in India as this consolidation under BJP is scaring them. Although I have my reservations with BJP under current leadership despite Modi's unheard of popularity. I have my reservations as well because I am also more libertarian than BJP. What's your view on Shama Prasad Mukherjee's opposition of Quit India movement and him telling British that he will put it down in Bengal? I'm unsure what to think of him now. I used to respect him. All people are shades of gray. They have, everyone has done some great things, some bad things, some gray things. Criticize him for this because I'm saying this without actually knowing the full details of this accusation. I have only heard that he did say these things. For what reasons I don't exactly know. People who have read more about this particular situation will be able to better answer. But for that you don't need to eliminate Shyam Prasad Mukherjee from your life completely. So Rajaji is now a favorite, of course. He would be he would be, who was a sore loser, as we now know what happened to him in Tamil Nadu when he had to resign from his own CM post after 6 months. I also stopped watching Kushal after his stupidity on our deities. Only atheists I follow are Dr. Ranganathan, AIM Kushal, AIM. Okay. Libertarian Party in US is an absolute joke. Exactly. This is interesting that our Indians are as stupid as the Libertarian Party of USA. Their Libertarian Party is absolutely similarly stupid. Ben Shapiro, Vivek Ramaswamy, not Ramaswamy. Ben Shapiro is probably more libertarian than Vivek Ramaswamy. Even even Ben Shapiro had to say this, that I am absolutely in favor of libertarianism. I'm in favor of Laddie Elder, but I am in favor of libertarianism. But the Libertarian Party is is filled with dumb fucks. Yes, and ultimately we gave a major credit for Ram Mandir to Sitaram Goel. Hope in the future there will be a tribute to him there in Ayodhya. Have we really given a credit to Sitaram Goel? I don't think the people outside the kind of book reading community of the Indian right wing, no one outside that really knows about Sitaram Goel. And some libertarians know about it. Sanjeev Sanyal knows about him. Shekhar Gupta says that Sitaram Goel is a serious historian, those kinds of things. I have read somewhere that Mandal politics led to the rise of middle sections in India and then to Hindutva. Or was it the cause for divide? I wonder what Sitaram Goel had to say about it. I don't know what Sitaram Goel would say about it, but rise of middle sections is absolutely because of post 1991 reforms. Have you watched Upward video on Sheikh Mujibur? No, I haven't yet. I plan to. I think the leftists want to team up with the Libertarian Party to implement the woke capitalism of USA. Goa is not any kind of intellectual. What does he want with conservative intellectuals? I despise people like Goa. His point was that kya hai? He was being arrogant. Okay, he was saying that what is this conservative movement? There are no intellectuals even. कहाँ है तुम्हारे intellectuals? हाँ, और पीछे सीताराम गोयल बैठा है. क्या 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 कर रहा है भोसड़ी के? और उसके सामने जैसा दीपक विक्रम संपत भी था. एक साल बाद ही ये सब बुक आना शुरू हो गया. See, Raja Gopalachari was not a conservative at all. Yes, he was a libertarian. Libertarianism is not really conservative. That's the difference between, let's say, Milton Friedman and Chanakya. That's the difference between Ben Shapiro and Vivek Ramaswamy. How do you view libertarianism in general? See it as an absolute joke? It seems like asking for peace instead of fighting for cultural war. In America, they always help insignificantly. The left, by the way. That's the problem. Libertarian people who spout, who keep around carrying the banner of libertarianism. Those people are stupid. Libertarianism is not stupid. And incidentally, you all might think that I'm copying everything Vivek is saying, but I was on this position forever, and now Vivek actually says the same thing, that I was a libertarian rapper when I was in college. Then I realized no, state does have a role to play, and that's where I am. That's where Chanakya was basically. That free market and free enterprise needs to happen. Government needs to be as small as possible, and bullshit government spending, freebies, reservations, subsidies, these things need to go away. But government does have a role to play, which is protection of life, liberty, and property. Devdutt is as crooked as it gets. Nityanand Mishra and Rajiv Malhotra absolutely demolished him, and I had no idea before today that Devdutt Patnaik is such a crooked guy. Shyama Prasad felt that Bengal and India itself will go to Muslims if the British leave, and he preferred the British over that, considering our past with the brutality of Muslim rule in Bengal. That might be an argument. That might have been the case. Devdutt even called 16K wives of Krishna as mistress or junior wife of Krishna. Quit India movement was a very weirdly timed move by Gandhi, which made little sense to a lot of people who had other problems. Yes, even Nehru opposed Quit India in principle because of the timing and manner, but Sardarji supported it. So supporting Quit India or India or not was very controversial back then. Yeah. Now it's sold to us like it was an obvious thing to do. Kahe nahi gaya Quit India ke movement mein? But it wasn't that obvious back then. Difference between libertarian and anarcho-capitalism. So anarcho-capitalism does come under the idea of libertarianism, but libertarianism would involve someone who would not believe directly to anarcho-capitalism as well. Okay, someone who would say that have a state, but just do life, liberty, and property. Just do negative rights, not positive rights, which we have discussed in past live streams as well. So if a government just ensures negative rights and does not do positive rights, then it's still libertarianism, but it's not anarcho-capitalism. And anarcho-capitalists would say that anarchism आया है, anarchism लाना है, government को मारो गोली, because हम capitalism के तौर पे ही खुद ब खुद के साथ all the citizens amongst each other, we will just do business with each other and take care of the society. Devdutt Patnaik looks at Krishna stories from LGBTQ perspective. Yes, capitalism means not the ends. Capitalism is means, not the ends. The problem with Ayn Rand objectivism, they derive morals from it. We shouldn't derive absolute ethics from a system. Well said. An example of Guha the idiot. He loves the 20th century paper Modern Review and its editorials, but forgets that its editor was member to Hindu Mahasabha in Bengal. Even Savarkar and Jinnah didn't support it because obviously British didn't leave one day because we started random hartal asking them to leave. They would leave when they wished. Okay, now check out what insane things Hamara Devdutt Patnaik said to Sanjeev Sanyal. So, but be patient, because the first half is kind of both of them giving out their own views, and Devdutt Patnaik kind of seems polite but says stupid things anyway. In the second half of the interview, he absolutely changes colors and says basically unacceptable things. If I was a bit more angry as my younger days and as a little more intolerant, I would be the one asking for Devdutt Patnaik to go to jail right now. But because I'm a libertarian, I won't do it.
India versus Bharat debate rages on.
Welcome to India Today. Let me start by asking you to share your views on the idea that the name of our country
अरे ये
should
सिर्फ देवदत्त पटनायक का है.
really be Bharat and not India. Or at
Debate
least
कहाँ गया?
Bharat should be used much more than India, because Bharat is the name.
We tended to use India, but there is nothing in there not to allow us
Where's
to
the
use Bharat
debate?
as well.
दोनों स्क्रीन में होने
And
चाहिए
the
थे.
Jain tradition, which by the way are very close to each other. Time the word becomes India, it is a form.
Okay, I know what they did. Okay, so when Devdutt Patnaik was saying absolutely insane things, Sanjeev Sanyal was kind of fidgeting in his chair. Okay, I think they edited those parts out. So when whichever speaker is speaking, they are going to show just the speaker and the anchor, not the other guy, which was there in the previous video which I shared. The length is not clipped. Okay.
India versus Bharat debate rages on. Does India link us to British rulers? What should be our 21st century identity? Can Bharat and India coexist?
Is it correct to say that Bharat is the true native name of our country and India is an external imposition, or is the reality far more complex than this simplistic formulation? To shed critical light on this vexed historical and political debate, I am delighted to be joined on India Today's news track by well-known mythologist and author of Myth Equal to Mithya, a handbook of Hindu mythology, and multiple other books, Devdutt Patnaik. Devdutt, welcome to India Today. Let me start by asking you to share your views on the idea that the name of our country should.
So this is the first time I was seeing Devdutt Patnaik's interview, and I thought, what a nice guy, what a nice cute smile he is having.
Really be Bharat and not India, or at least Bharat should be used much more than India, because Bharat is the name that has Indic roots, and we should not be promoting a name that was the name the outside world saw us by. That India was never really the name of this country. The name really is Bharat. India is the name the rest of the world, particularly the Greeks, started calling our country by. How do you look at the entire controversy that's playing itself out right now? Devdutt Patnaik.
Namaste, Rahul. Thank you for inviting me. This is an interesting question, but let me give you a mythological answer. Now, in the Middle Eastern mythologies, there is an obsession with one god, one life, one prophet, singularity. Indian mythology loves diversity, plurality. So many gods, many ideas, many saints, many ways of thinking. We have always been a land which appreciates diversity and dynamism. So there is a Middle Eastern concept of singularity, and there is an Indian concept of plurality. So when somebody says we should have only one name, one idea, one thought, one language, they're really drifting towards Middle East, which is the mother of Western civilization.
Guys, what the fuck is this argument? Up until this point, I wasn't pissed off with him because he's just making an argument I disagree with, which I think is a hilarious argument. That इंडिया दैट इज भारत जो नाम है उसके बदले में सिर्फ भारत हो गया. दैट मीन्स वी आर हेडिंग टुवर्ड्स अ मिडल ईस्टर्न आइडियोलॉजी.
Right. I think India should retain its identity and celebrate plurality. And therefore, our gods, we have many gods, and every god has many names. So you have Shiva. Shiva, it can be called Shankar, can be called Bholenath. We have Vishnu, who can be called Narayan. So I think we belong to a land which celebrates diversity. We should not follow the Middle Eastern path. This is my personal view.
Could you share with those watching your understanding of the origins and the roots of the name India?
So the question about India, the origins of the name India, and you use this word native, Indic. This is foreign. This suggestion. So the word India is derived from a Sanskrit word called Sindhu. Sindhu means a river. Very specifically, it refers to the river that passes across India for several hundred kilometers before entering Pakistan. From Sindhu comes the name Sindhadesha. Now the Arabs cannot pronounce Sa, so they started using the word Ha. So Sapta Sindhu became Hapta Hindu. Sindh became Hind. And 2,500 years ago, we have the Persian king referring to India as Hind. The Greeks come to India. They can't say her, they say E. So Indu, Indus, Indica. So Megasthenes writes the book Indica, but he's really referring to the word Sindhu. So the origin of the word India comes from the Sanskrit word Sindhu. Sindh, Hind, Ind. Sindhu, Hindu, Indu, Indus. In fact, the word Indu means the moon and is the name of Ramchandra's grandmother. So Ram, who established Ram Rajya, his father was Dashrath. His grandfather, that is Dashrath's father, was Aja, who was married to Indumati. So maybe India comes from Indu, Indumati, Indus, Sindhu. So it's a very Indian sounding name. So we have associated it with the Greeks.
अच्छा, इंदुमती भी है, therefore India is an Indian sounding name, very Indian sounding name.
Some people think it's the British, not really. That's really uneducated people say such things. But it's not even the Greeks. It's really a Sanskrit word from the Rig Veda, Sindhu, which gives us India.
That's as far as India's.
So this is the argument he will now repeatedly make. Okay, but imagine this argument. India is a Sanskrit based word, okay, or is an Indian sounding name, because up until five, 6 layers of distortion back, it was a Sanskrit word. Therefore, India, which was created after distorting the original Sanskrit word 5-6 times, उसके बाद जो word आया, वो भी Indian है, वो भी Sanskrit word है. So, if Sanjeev Sanyal is named today called Hanjiv Hanyal, therefore Sanjeev Sanyal's name becomes Hanjiv Hanyal, and everyone has to call him Hanjiv Hanyal. He has to call himself Hanjiv Hanyal, most importantly. And if he doesn't do that, if he calls himself Sanjeev Sanyal only, then he is heading towards Middle Eastern mythologies. Holy fuck.
Concerned. I was reading your piece this morning. Could you explain to our viewers your understanding of the emergence of the word Bharat, its various contexts, the context in the north, the context in the south, in the light of the suggestion that this is the true Indian and true native name of our country?
So people have been asking me about Bharat. So the word Bharat comes from the word Bharat. And Bharat, the name first comes from the Rig Veda. You have Bharata, king of the Bharata clan, winning the battle of 10 kings in the Rig Veda. We don't know much about them. Now, Rig Veda happens only in the Kurukshetra region. Then you have the Mahabharata epic, again talking about the Bharata clan, and again it happens only in the northern part of India. Kuru Panchala region is roughly what is today Delhi, Mathura, up to Prayagraj. That's the zone. The first time the word Bharat Varsha is carved in stone, it is about 2,100 years ago in Odisha, in the Hathigumpha caves. You find this name Bharat Varsha, but it's referring to only the Gangetic region west of Magad. So it doesn't refer to the whole of India. So Bharat word really is a word which refers to certain parts of North India. Bharat Varsha refers to certain parts of North India. It's it is a name given by Brahmins. So whenever people say Bharat, 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 Bharat Khanda, Bharat Varsha, these are really coming from Brahmin sources, Vedas, Puranas, Dharma Shastras, something like our.
Okay, guys, I have a disappointing news. I understood what they have done. They have not kept the debate format. I don't know why. I guess because Devdutt Patnaik got destroyed in the debate. Now they are going to show all of Devdutt's replies pehle and then all of replies by Sanjeev Sanyal uske baad. This is insane stupidity. तो ऐसे ही देखेंगे क्या करे, उसका सब चुतिया आर्ग्यूमेंट सुनो, उसके बाद संदीप सान्याल का आर्ग्यूमेंट सुनो, और देन रिमेंबर व्हाट देवदत्त सेड, ओके, बिकॉज वी विल लिसन टू संदीप सान्याल्स आर्ग्यूमेंट्स लेटर ऑन.
Arya Desha, the land of Aryans. So Bharata is the king of the Aryans, the victorious kings of the Aryans. So it's a very North Indian Brahminical word that emerges. And one must remember that. There's another Bharat, of course, very famous from the Jain traditions, who is the son of Rishabhadev, the first Tirthankara. And Bharat is the first Chakravarti. And I believe that probably the word Bharat really comes from the Jain traditions, but we don't value Jain traditions. Remember, Jainism was very powerful at one time, but it was driven out of many parts of India, like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. So really, the Bharata Chakravarti would have been known in South India in a very, very big way. North Indian Bharat perhaps comes from Brahmin traditions, and the South Indian Bharat perhaps comes from Jain traditions. So, we have to think about these things, which we usually don't teach these things in history, right? The Jain Bharata, who is a Chakravarti from South India, maybe, where, he visits his brother Bahubali statues in the South India. So we have to think about these characters also.
As people listen to both your answers, would it then be fair to conclude that Bharat?
तो ये both the answers बोला है, मगर संदीप सान्याल का रिप्लाई नहीं दिखा रहा है, because it otherwise would have probably showed that Devdutt Patnaik got hilariously destroyed in the debate. What sinister, insanity is this?
The name has its origins entirely in India, where you gave the story about Indumati, which is, as you write, possibly also a WhatsApp forward, not necessarily entirely historical, probable, but not necessarily true. But on balance, the chances are higher that India was really an external interpretation of the name of our motherland. It had roots in India, but India is what the Greeks and the others called us. So then the question becomes, what should our country really be called? An idea which is native, or a name which is external to our country?
I don't think that the word Bharat comes from India and in.
So when he's saying these things, उसके पहले संदीप सान्याल ने पहले argument दे दिया था. Okay, remember that. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting too many times, but remember all these insanity he's spouting, because all these will be all these had been countered in real time by Sandeep Sanyal.
India comes from foreigners. That's not a conclusion. That's your conclusion. That's a political conclusion, and that comes from Chanakya Niti of divide and rule. Sam Dam Danda Bhed.
अच्छा, तो नीनर बोल रहा है कि ओरिजिनल वीडियो एक्स पे है, ट्विटर पे है, तो वहां से देखे क्या? ओके, होल्ड ऑन, वहीं से देखते हैं, नहीं तो मजा नहीं आएगा, क्योंकि डिबेट इज आफ्टर ऑल अ बिट एंटरटेनिंग एज वेल. अदरवाइज ये सब आर्ग्यूमेंट्स तो हमको भी पता है, हम देख रहे हैं क्योंकि उसका यहाँ पे मजाक उड़ाया गया था. एक मिनट ढूंढ लेते हैं इससे. AIM के प्लेटफॉर्म पे ना, प्रोफाइल में अभिजीत अय्यर मित्रा. वेट, लेट्स चेक आउट फ्रॉम देयर ओनली. Now Abhijit Ayyar Mitra shares so many things. Oh no, he posted just 6 minutes of it. Okay, so there's no point. तो पहले उसका 6 minutes देख लेते हैं. Oh, he is also saying that the video is private and they have deleted it because of that. I see. Okay. तो पहले ये देख लेते हैं, उसके बाद अगर टाइम रहा तो वो 6 minutes का वो भी देख लेंगे. तो यहाँ पहले full argument सुन लेते हैं.
But India comes from the word Sindhu, which is a Vedic word. Bharat comes from Bharat, which is also found in the Vedas. Bharat also comes from Bharat, which is a Jain word. So we must be aware that the word Sindhu was called Hindu by Persians and Hindu by Greeks, but they didn't give us the word. It comes from an Indian river, a Vedic river called Sindhu. So the Brahmins of India, the Brahmanas, they have controlled the literature of our land, right? So Aryans, the word Arya comes from Brahmins, but the Jains and the Buddhists look at Aryans very differently compared to the Hindus. So we must be careful of the Brahmin use of the word Bharat and appropriation from the Jain traditions, right? They're appropriating it from the Jain traditions, one can argue. But the word Sindhu is a Vedic word, and India comes from Sindhu. So this internal, external, it's again Brahminical, right? It's a past thing, right? What is internal is pure, what is external is malech, is impure, and the impure people should be kept out the way untouchables were kept.
Okay, now guys, he's saying there should be no concept of outsiders and outgroups. Okay, it's fair enough to argue who you consider an outgroup, that should be decided. Okay, now maybe hypothetically a religious society should not consider atheists as the outgroup and kick all of them away out of the country. That should not ideally happen in my opinion. But if a country does do that, fair enough, they will lose their potential atheist contributors to the society like Pakistan has. But कोई भी आउटग्रुप नहीं होगा, कोई आउटसाइडर नहीं होगा. ये कैसा आइडिया है? Which is why I was saying, does he have fucking doors in his home? Does he have locks in his home? Does he have a building wall in his campus? What the fuck is he talking about? You don't keep anyone out in any context, in any situation. चलो अमित मालविया का मैं ढूंढते रहता हूँ यहाँ पे, ये चलने दो.
out. The untouchables were kept out of our villages. So we should not celebrate this mindset. It's not healthy. This is a very Brahmin caste mindset. That internal things, अंदर की चीजें कोटियाड़ के अंदर रखो, उसके बाहर उल्लंघन. You know, Sita crossed the Lakshman Rekha and therefore becomes impure. Outside is bad, inside is good. Not a healthy mindset, I think. We are a plural country. We allow things to come in. You know,
मिल गया. Congratulations to us, guys. Thank you, Jai Hind दोस्तों, for recommending this. Oh my God. So imagine Sanjeev Sanyal's brilliance, that he works out a lot. He's a Taekwondo black belt, is still fit as fuck. He's 55 years, about 52, 53 years old. He's the economic advisor to the prime minister of the biggest democracy in the world. G20 summit सर पे है. उसके बीच में कैजुअली जाके हिस्ट्री डिबेट कर रहा है और धो डाल रहा है ओपोनेंट को, जो कि सो कॉल्ड इंटेलेक्चुअल है. इतना धो डाल रहा है क्योंकि जिससे कि चैनल को डिलीट करना पड़ रहा है वीडियो. ओके, that's the stature of Sanjeev Sanyal. Sanjeev Sanyal is the only one who comes close to being Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy is basically Jai Sai Deepak and Sanjeev Sanyal fused into one. Yeah, I found it, guys. So now let's check from here. Thank God for Elon Musk.
Political war.
So, you know, you have Shiva, it can be called Shankar, can be called Bholenath. You have Vishnu, who can be called Narayan. So I think the question about India, Sindhu, Hindu.
Well, I don't even understand.
Eastern sensibility rather than the Indian sensibility, which picks plurality, multiplicity, diversity, and therefore this needn't be picking Bharat over India. Both can coexist at the same time. Just philosophically, on the government at this moment wanting to push the name Bharat, the Prime Minister's tag for ASEAN, before that in Egypt saying Prime Minister of Bharat, the President's invitation says President of Bharat. How are you seeing this play out? Are we wanting to up the ante and recalibrate the prioritization of the use Bharat? Sanjeev Sanyal.
Well, I don't even understand what the debate is about. I mean, the fact is that Bharat is a well-established name for India. It's there in our constitution. So is India, by the way. It's, you know, the constitution starts with India, that is Bharat. So both the names have been in wide use. In Indian languages, we normally use Bharat. Happened to be that when we use English, we tended to use India, but there is nothing in there not to allow us to use Bharat as well. As I said, the constitution, the English version of the constitution, starts with India, that is Bharat. So, you know, it is. I think we should be happy enough to use the name Bharat commonly. And by the way, we are hardly the only country in the world that has multiple names. I mean, you have the United Kingdom, which is also called Great Britain. You have Netherlands and Holland. You have Japan and Nippon. So, you know, we can also use Bharat and India interchangeably when we wish, wherever we want. So I don't see why somehow the use of the word Bharat is somehow seen as an intrusion into the English language.
Devdutt Patnaik, could you share with those watching at this moment your understanding of the origins and the roots of the name India?
So the question about India, the origins of the name India, and you use this word native, Indic. This is foreign, this suggestion. So the word India is derived from a Sanskrit word called Sindhu.
So I'm skipping this part a little, okay?
Specifically, it refers.
We know what you said.
The Greek's father, that is Dashrath's father, was Aja, India.
Sanjeev Sanyal, one of the things that's been said is that Bharat is the native name of our country, whereas India is a foreign imposition. The Greeks use the word India. It comes from the word Sindhu, but it's not really an Indian origin name. The likes of Devdutt Patnaik would argue, giving the reasons that you just heard, that it is as Indian or as much a part of our culture as Bharat is, and therefore it isn't correct to say that this is a foreign imposition. How do you give us your understanding of the roots of the name India, and whether you truly think that India is an external imposition?
Well, first of all, India is a foreign name, but it is indeed of Indian origin. Part of what Devdutt said is correct. So let me explain how the name India came about and how the name Bharat came about, but they actually come from the same origin. So you need to understand what the origin is. Now, the name Bharat actually has two origin stories. There is an older origin story, which is a Vedic origin story, and a later one, which is a Puranic one. But the link between the names Bharat and India actually go back to the Vedic story, the original Bronze Age story. So let me tell you that story, then you'll immediately understand how this works. So back in the early Bronze Age, the Vedic age, we are told in the Rig Veda that there was a tribe called the Bharatas, or also called the Trutsus, who lived in roughly what is now Haryana. And they used to call their homeland Sapta Sindhu, or the land of the 7 rivers. Now what happens is that the Bharatas are attacked from the west by a coalition of 10 tribes. And there is a great battle on the banks of the river Ravi, or then called Parushti, in which the Bharatas completely decimate the 10 tribes. Then what happens is that they turn eastward and they defeat another chieftain called Bheda on the banks of the Yamuna. So what happens is that the Bharatas, start out from this original homeland called the Sapta Sindhu in Haryana, and they spread out and create India's first empire. And their chieftain, whose name is Sudas, then conducts the first Ashwamedha Yagya and becomes a Chakravartin, whose symbol is the wheel. So we have the Mauryan wheel in our flag, but the origin of the idea of it being the symbol of power is actually goes back to King Sudas of the Bharata tribe. Now, note here that there is 2 words. One is Bharata, and there is Sapta Sindhu. The Sapta Sindhu is the name of their homeland, and Bharata is the name of the tribe. Now, note here next what happens. What happens is that the Bharatas, they do something quite unique. You see, typically a tribe would just impose their gods on whoever were the defeated gods. Instead, the Bharatas call all the defeated tribes, and even the tribes that were surrounding them, they hadn't defeated them, but were in contact with them. And they basically put together all the knowledge they had, which we now know as the compilation of the Vedas.
Guys, pausing just to say one personal anecdote, that when I read this thing in Land of 7 Rivers, okay, this was in the very first or second chapters, I think, probably second chapter. This is when that light bulb went off in my brain that what? India is a great country. This is the start of India. This. And then he went to write insane other things as well in this book, Land of 7 Rivers, which he named Land of 7 Rivers because it is the land of Sapta Sindhu. And this is where my love for Indian culture, heritage, history, everything started.
The first 3 Vedas. And in the very last chant of the Rig Veda, there is something like a contract between all these tribes where they say that, look, we will give all the tribes and their gods a place around the sacrificial fire. So in the very last chant of the Rig Veda, all the tribes that they knew about, all their gods were given a place around the sacrificial fire. So it's sort of like a contract. And in some ways, this is the idea of pluralism that triggers Indian civilization. It is an idea of assimilation as opposed to imposition. Now what happens is this idea begins to spread. So over a period of time, this idea, more and more gods have given place around the sacrificial fire, and more people begin to accept the identity of being Bharatiya. And so by the Iron Age, the whole landscape of the Indian...
Yes, we are ready to accept. But the acceptance can't be just our one-sided invitation. Okay, nahi aao. No, I accept you. No, I accept you. They also have to say that, yes, I accept you. And therefore, I also agree to sit beside the fire with you. And if I even don't agree with your God, I don't even want my God to be worshipped by you. Even then, he is allowed to live here like Jews and Parsis. But वो अगर कोई ये भी नहीं करेगा, assimilate भी नहीं करेगा और शांति से अपने आप में भी नहीं रहेगा, तब तो प्रॉब्लम होना ही है. तब तो एथनो मेजोरिटेरियनिज्म होना ही है. क्या करें?
Subcontinent has come to call itself Bharatiya, and the land of the 7 rivers idea, the Sapta Sindhu, then comes to cover the whole idea. So you end up with this chant, which is very commonly used even today during when you do ritual baths and so on, which goes somewhat like this. Gange cha Yamunu chaiva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Jalasmin Kuru. So what does it do? The 7 rivers, which were originally just the tributaries of the Sindhu, of the Saraswati, it didn't include, by the way, the Sindhu river. The Sapta Sindhu includes only the tributaries of the Saraswati originally. They came to take over all these rivers across India, which went all the way down to Kaveri. So now all of India becomes Sapta Sindhu. Okay, so this is the origins of the name Bharata as per the Rigvedic tradition. Okay, now what happens is other countries also call India Sapta Sindhu. Now in the Avesta, which is the Persian texts, what happens is there's a phonetic shift. Devdutt also mentioned a phonetic shift among the Arabs. Actually, it's amongst the Persians, the ancient Avestan Persians. And the sound of Sa becomes H. So Saraswati becomes Harahati. By the way, the same thing happens in modern Assamese as well, as it happens to be. And so Sapta Sindhu becomes Hapta Hindu. Now, I'm telling you this because this confusion because the word Sindhu is used in isolation to mean the Sindhu River or the Indus River. That's not the case. The first known use of the word Hindu comes in the context of Hapta Hindu, i.e. Sapta Sindhu, which is the name which the Western Persians called India. And by the way, there seemed to have been some dispute between the Westerns and the Vedic Indians because they tend to mention that the Hapta Hindu region had had gone into bad times and bad things had happened there and so on. So there are obviously some sort of a conflict going on there, which we can't tell what exactly it is.
Okay.
Anyway, this is the origin. Hapta Hindu is the origin of the word Hindu. Now, that is correct, that this word then goes further westward and then becomes India. So you go from Sapta Sindhu to Hapta Hindu to Hindu, and then that becomes India. That part of it is absolutely correct. This random extrapolation into the word Hindu, which is an Indian word, etc., which Devdutt did, there is no historical evidence of that. That is a separate issue altogether.
Okay.
But this part of the story that I said, which is the link between Bharata and Sapta Sindhu, is an old one and a very well-established one in the text.
Devdutt Patnaik, I was reading.
Sanjeev Sanyal is being respectful. He at best, what you can accuse of Sanjeev, what can you accuse Sanjeev Sanyal of doing? He said he used the word random. Maybe that was a tad bit rude. Okay, a tad bit. But Devdutt Patnaik is saying he is a politician. This is casteism. This is Middle Eastern mythology, Middle Eastern ethics. सब कुछ घुसा दिया संजीव सन्याल के ऊपर.
Reading your piece this morning, could you explain, as you see it, the emergence of the word Bharat in the context of this being the native name of our country?
So people have been asking me about Bharat. So the word Bharat comes from the word Bharat. And Bharat, the name first comes from the Rig Veda. You have Bharata, king of the Bharata clan, winning the battle of 10 kings in the Rig Veda. We don't know much about them. Now, Rig Veda happens only in the Kurukshetra region. Then you have the Mahabharata epic, again talking about the Bharata clan, and again it happens only in the northern part of India. Kuru Panchala region is roughly what is today Delhi, Mathura, up to Prayagraj. That's the zone. The first time the word Bharat Varsha is carved in stone, it is about 2,100 years ago in Odisha, in the Hathigumpa caves. You find this name Bharat Varsha, but it's referring to only the Gangetic region west of Magad. So it doesn't refer to the whole of India. So Bharat word really is a word which refers to certain parts of North India. Bharat Varsha refers to certain parts of North India. It's it is a name given by Brahmins. So whenever people say Bharat, Khanda, Bharat Varsha, these are really coming from Brahmin sources, Vedas, Puranas, Dharmashastras, something like Arya Desha, the land of Arya.
Okay, I'm not in favor of casteism, but Brahmin sources नहीं होगा तो कहाँ का source होगा? शूद्रों का क्या अलग source होगा? उनका अलग books होगा और उस books में क्या अलग सा history होगा कि नहीं हमारा देश भारत नहीं था, हमारा देश का नाम था पाकिस्तान गढ़, ऐसा कुछ नाम होगा. Sources तो scholars जो है उस समय का वही लिखेंगे. So it's like saying that 1000 years from now, these were PhD sources, these were scholarly sources. वो professors का source है, वो real source नहीं है. Or is he making the argument that yes, scholars can be corrupt, so even today we should not listen to scholars, we should not listen to PhDs, we should listen to only PNOC.
So Bharata is the king of the Aryans, the victorious kings of the Aryans. So it's a very North Indian Brahminical word that emerges. And one must remember that. There's another Bharat, of course, very famous from the Jain traditions, who is the son of Rishabhadev, the first Tirthankara. And Bharat is the first Chakravarti. And I believe that probably the word Bharat really comes from the Jain traditions, but we don't value Jain traditions. Remember, Jainism was very powerful at one time, but it was driven out of many parts of India, like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. So really, the Bharata Chakravarti would have been known in South India in a very, very big way.
Okay. Before some now Ambedkarite jumps on this particular part of the clip and ignores the rest of it and says that see, Hindus drove out Jains. So at some point of time in India, everyone or the other drove someone or the other out, but that driving out, was it driving out of the people, destroying their home, their temples, their livelihood, everything, or was it a driving away of the ideology? Just like during the Pal dynasty of Bengal, Hinduism could be argued that it was driven out. Entire Bengal became Buddhist because of Pals, and uska non-violence हम लेके बैठे थे, और उसके बाद आए पत्थरबाज, लो तुम non-violence खाओ बैठ के. Or and that is why I don't take part in that Bodgi versus Bengal debate at all, because even Pal Rajas went up till Punjab to invade. Okay, so did they do that peacefully? क्या जाके पीसफुल एक ट्रांजिशन ऑफ पावर हुआ? अच्छा, तुम आज तक पंजाब का राजा थे, आज से हमारे अंडर राजा बन गए। कोई युद्ध बुद्ध नहीं हुआ। तो कोई ना कोई किसी के साथ युद्ध तो करेगा। उसका रेलेवेंस क्या है? कितना जेनोसाइड हुआ था कि सिर्फ लोग वॉर में मारे गए थे, और वॉर के अलावा क्या हुआ, और आज उसका रिलेशंस क्या है उन दो जगहों में और उनके डिसेंडेंट्स में। दैट इज द ओनली थिंग आई एम कंसर्न्ड अबाउट. Because if you want to keep harping me with Borgi versus Bengali, I will bring out everything I know about Ghoti versus Bangal. Okay, Bangal families have kind of forgiven Muslims for what they did because of the communist mindset, but they have not forgotten or forgiven what Ghoti Hindus did to Bangals. Okay.
North Indian Bharat perhaps comes from Brahmin traditions, and the South Indian Bharat perhaps comes from Jain traditions. So, we have to think about these things, which we usually don't. We don't teach these things in history. Right? The Jain Bharata, who is a Chakravarti from South India, maybe, where, he visits his brother Bahubali statues in the South India. So we have to think about these characters also.
Sanjeev Sanyal, let me get you to wade in on this. The idea that Bharat is somehow a Brahminical formulation by the Brahmins in the way they saw and interpreted history, and that there are other traditions, south of India, the Jain tradition as well, which isn't given as much eminence when the name Bharat is propped up in the modern time.
Well, again, I'm sorry to say that Devdutt has presented some of the facts, but his interpretation is entirely garbled, and some of it is actually incorrect. So he mentions the Battle of 10 Kings in Kurukshetra. That's not where it happened at all. It happened on the banks of the Parushni, or the Ravi, which is now the area would be in West Punjab, in what is now Pakistani Punjab, and not in Kurukshetra. Anyway, point is, he is right that there is another tradition of where the Puranic tradition and the Jain tradition, which by the way are very close to each other, that there was a king Bharat, who was a Chakravartin, who was the son or grandson of the king Rishabh. So one of those stories, and there are slight variations on it, so I'll give you one of them. So there was a king Rishabh, who was a great king, and he's the same king who is supposed to be the founder, incidentally, of the Jain tradition. He had a son, by the way, called Nabhi, who was a great warrior, and he is said to have conquered the Jambu Dvipa, or the subcontinent. And in fact, India has another name, by the way, called Nabhi Varsha. Anyway, his son, Bharat, would then go on to become another great conqueror. And so the name Bharat Varsha is by and large from this tradition. By the way, the Puranic tradition on Bharat Varsha and the Jain tradition agree on this. This is not something of great debate. And turning this into some Brahminical versus Jain thing is meaningless. Also turning it into a North Indian versus South Indian is meaningless. Because by the time these Puranic stories are being written, South India is more than comfortably part of the wider Indic civilizational idea. So just so that you know, the oldest known Tamil text is the Tolpakiyam. Okay, it's a grammar. Tolpakiyam is a Tamil grammar. And in the preface of that grammar, Tolpakiyam, it is very clear that you have the very first enunciation of Tamil identity. And it will come as some surprise to those who prefer a Periyarist view of the world, that in that preface, where the first proclamation of Tamil identity is mentioned, it also mentions that this identity is firmly based on the 4 Vedas. So please go and read the Tolpakiyam, the preface to the Tolpakiyam, and in there read that when the people say, the Tamils enunciate that they are the people who live between the Venkata hills in the north and the Kumari in the south, which is basically not too different from, Kumari is Kanyakumari, and in the north you have the Venkata hills. Then those people, their identity is based on the 4 Vedas. It is very clearly written. There's no way of getting around it.
Okay, Devdutt Patak, as people heard.
So here, Sanjeev Sanyal already casually, calmly, nicely, without having that sarcastic, I'm a nice guy smile, destroyed Devdutt Patnaik, even though a lot of the interview is even left as of yet. So this is why they had to delete the video, basically. So Sanjeev Sanyal is doing a great job at being polite. Okay, he just used that one word random and then said that he uses the word Brahminical repeatedly, but that does not mean anything. That is just a counter argument. But isse zyada kya kare? And he's keeping his calm cool only because he works out a lot. Usse zyada politeness yahan pe aasha karna galat hai.
Both your answers, would it then be fair to conclude that Bharat has more Indian roots On balance, you gave the story about Queen Hindu, but on probability, the chances are higher that India is the external interpretation of the name of our motherland as it passes along the west and reaches Greece. That's how it becomes India. So India is really how the Western world saw us, or the Greeks and the Persians saw us, whereas Bharat has stronger Indian roots.
I don't think that the word Bharat comes from India, and India comes from foreigners. That's not a conclusion. That's your conclusion. That's a political conclusion, and that.
Now, what the fuck does this mean? That's a political conclusion or a politician's conclusion? What kind of a counter argument is this?
Comes from Chanakya Niti of divide and rule. Sam Dam Danda Bhed.
Now he is being sarcastic with that creepy, fake, polite smile of his.
Bharat has stronger Indian roots.
I don't think that the word Bharat comes from India, and India comes from foreigners. That's not a conclusion. That's your conclusion. That's a political conclusion, and that comes from Chanakya Niti of divide and rule. Sam Dam Danda Bhed. But India comes from the word Sindhu, which is a Vedic word. Bharat comes from Bharat, which is found in the Vedas. Bharat also comes from Bharat, which is a Jain word. So we must be aware that the word Sindhu was called Hindu by Persians and Hindu by Greeks, but they didn't give us the word. It comes from an Indian river, a Vedic river called Sindhu. So
they literally gave us the word. The origin was not given by them. The derivative was given by them.
The Brahmins of India, the Brahmanas, they have controlled the literature of our land, right? So Aryans, the word Arya comes from Brahmins, but the Jains and the Buddhists look at Aryans very differently compared to the Hindus. So we must be careful of the Brahmin use of the word Bharat and appropriation from the Jain traditions, right? They're appropriating it from the Jain tradition.
Okay, I have something to say about appropriation as well. Now, just because it's cool to criticize appropriation today does not mean appropriation is blanket wrong all the time. Appropriation can also mean accepting and taking interest in someone's culture as well. Okay, if I am a metalhead today and I start a metal band, am I appropriating American culture? What the fuck? I like metal music and I'm doing it myself. I like metal music to that extent. That's my respect for metal music, created not by Indians, which I'm just accepting. I'm thinking, yeah, it works great for me and I will also pursue it. That means appropriation, and that should be criticized.
One can argue, but the word Sindhu is a Vedic word, and India comes from Sindhu. So this internal, external, it's again Brahminical, right? It's a caste thing, right? What is internal is pure, what is external is malech, is impure, and the impure people should be kept out. The way untouchables were kept out, the untouchables were kept out of our villages. So we should not celebrate this mindset. It's not healthy. This is a very Brahmin caste.
Arey bhai, untouchables were kept out of our villages. What the fuck does this mean? So he or his ancestors were one of the people who kept people out of their villages, but they did live in some villages or in some parts of the city. How were Shudras getting anything done? How were people in the city getting anything done? Kshatriya, Vaishya या फिर ब्राह्मण जाके रास्ता साफ करता था? Out of the village हुआ तो कैसे काम कैसे किया? Okay, or where were they living? In the forests? If the Shudras were living in the forests, who were the Panchamas? What the fuck is he talking about? And even today, don't rich people live in one part of the country or even the city, and people who work as housemaids in our homes, they live in a different place? That's because of untouchability or just because of economic realities? Oh my god.
Mindset, that internal things, अंदर की चीजें कोटियार के अंदर रखो, उसके बाहर उल्लंघन, Sita crossed the Lakshman Rekha and therefore becomes impure. Outside is bad, inside is good. Not a healthy mindset, I think. We are a plural country. We allow things to come in. Potatoes have come from outside and we celebrate potatoes. Horses have come from outside and we celebrate. Aryans came from outside and we call ourselves Arya Desha. So
oh fuck. Look at the way he's fucking talking. Okay, these fake politeness, these fake polite people is what I can't take absolutely. Sanjeev Sanyal's face is not overtly polite. He's not smiling all the time. This guy has that smile and goes on spewing absolute vile, poisonous bullshit. It's not just a difference of opinion. He's being rude. He's saying vile things to Sanjeev Sanyal and to the people who believe in these arguments and this side of opinions on history.
we should just allow internal. What is it? Everybody came from Africa, so we are all technically, genetically African. So I think these are. But then politicians know better than scholars. We are like, हम तो mythologist है, scholars है. Those, उनके हाथ में तलवार है.
Now he's fucking being sarcastic. Yeah, the Sandeep Sanyal is a politician. He knows हम तो नहीं जानते, हम तो गरीब आदमी हैं.
Those who have the sword are far more powerful than those with a pen, right?
Okay, this is a fascinating conversation. I'm not wading in on one side or the other, but to hear both Devdutt Patnaik and Sanjeev Sanyal give their responses one by one gives us the full context of the debate that is at play. I want Sanjeev Sanyal to respond that internal, external, this formulation isn't healthy, can't come to the conclusion that outside is bad, inside is somehow good. Again, making the point that it's the Brahmins who control the literature of the country. Therefore, it's a very Brahminical way of looking at this country.
Look, Brahmins did control the literature, just like today's scholars control the literature. Doesn't mean some historical realities, okay, some day-to-day realities might be different for a Brahmin from that of a Shudra. देश का नाम अलग नहीं हो जाता है. देश का नाम अलग तो आज के स्कॉलर्स के लिए भी है. Okay, JNU का sociologist बोल रहा है कि Kashmir has never been an integral part of India, and that is a historical fact. Kashmir Shaivism अलग देश में लिखा गया था. तो देश का नाम अलग अलग होना is not what happens, or basic names and names of places, names of things, proper nouns. How much of that was vastly different between a Shudra and a Brahmin? What is going on here?
And it's essentially an appropriation from the Jain traditions, because India also comes from Sindhu, so it is as Indian can be. Sanjeev Sanyal.
Look, I mean, just repeating Brahminical several times doesn't mean that he answered your question at all. Fact of the matter is, as I said, there is a very ancient Vedic tradition which predates Puranic and Jainism.
He doesn't smile or start smiling or stop his smile. He just keeps smiling with that same frozen, creepy face, even when Sanjeev Sanyal also kind of counters him.
Which talks about India as being part of the Bharat tribe and so on. And of course, as I mentioned, also Sapta Sindhu, which, by the way, are related very closely, because the Bharat tribe considered the Sapta Sindhu as being their homeland. And then that idea then spreads. That also we have, as I gave you the chant, that clearly shows this happens. And there are many other evidences. By the time the Puranic evidence comes, the Puranas say that south of the Himalayas and north of the oceans live a people who are the Bharatiya. So again, the more than enough evidence, and I don't know why this should become Jains versus Brahmins or some strange garbled argument. All the Indic religions clearly understand and celebrate the.
So Sanjeev Sanyal is now kind of going a little to the side of rudeness as well, after all the things he said. Politician का argument है, हम तो भाई झोला लेके चलेंगे, हम तो गरीब आदमी हैं, हम तो स्कॉलर है, माइथोलॉजिस्ट है, और ये तो ब्राह्मणिकल आर्ग्यूमेंट है. ये सब इतना बार इसने बोला, उसके बाद संदीप सन्याल थोड़ा बहुत अपना बंदूक निकाल रहा है.
Fact that there is a civilization living between the southern oceans and the northern mountains that consider themselves Bharatiya and partake of the civilization. So this word Bharatiya is very much Indian. Now, as I mentioned, I accept that the word India has Indian origins, but it is not Indian. So Sindhu becomes Hindu, becomes India. So by Devdutt's own admission, that by the time the word becomes India, it is a foreign word. That doesn't mean it's a bad word. It's being used widely. I use it myself. And nowhere has, I think, the government ever said that the word India is being banished. So I don't even understand what this debate is. The constitution clearly says India, that is Bharat. They are both valid words, and we should use them.
So this is why I think Indian government is not really changing officially our name to Bharat or anything. They are just going to casually use Bharat as much as possible everywhere, because constitution में है कि इंडिया और भारत तो सेम ही है, ये इक्वल तो सेम ही है, ऐसे ही कैजुअली हर जगह पे भारत ही यूज कर देंगे. क्या है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली इन इंडिया भारत मींस द सेम थिंग एज इंडिया.
Devdutt Patnaik, changing a name isn't just about nomenclature. It's also cultural, it's political.
So I would say they have even bypassed that sinister skeptical look I was concerned I was having, that they one day a government might do this to gain brownie points, and someone might still do. This government is not even doing it to gain brownie points. They have casually done this, that hey, our country is India, our country is Bharat only, so why not have Bharat in our documents? किसने बोल दिया कि हर जगह इंडिया ही लिखना होगा? India is Bharat.
Bombay became Mumbai, Calcutta became Kolkata, Madras became Chennai. While many opposed these changes at the time, now they seem to be commonly accepted. So what are the similarities you see between the debates that played out at the time when these names were sought to be changed and what we're seeing now?
Yes, changing names is something that politicians do when you're
Look at this.
We don't give ourselves names, right? Our parents give us names, elders give us names.
Again, he just calls Sandeep Sanyal's arguments a politician's argument.
Teachers give us names. And then when do we change our names? When we change our religion. When you change your religion, you change your name. When you become a sannyasi, you change your name.
अच्छा, तो अब आओ लाइन पे. रिलीजियन चेंज होने से नाम किसका चेंज होता है? जैन, कोई जैनिज्म में कन्वर्ट करेगा तो नाम चेंज हो जाएगा? बुद्धिज्म में कन्वर्ट करेगा तो नाम चेंज हो जाएगा? कौन रिलीजन में जाने के लिए नाम चेंज करना पड़ता है? क्यों चेंज करना पड़ता है?
So I think that is where the mindset, changing religion, this conversion idea is what leads us to deny ourselves. The greatest countries in the world have multiple names. Germany is called Deutschland. China is not called China by the Chinese. The local people call it a very different name. Bhutan is called very differently. The Bhutanese call Bhutan Drukgyal, if I'm not mistaken. So in all great civilization, we say Egypt, but the Arabs and call it Misr. So great.
By his argument only, it should be called Bharat. He is saying that a lot of countries, outsiders call it by some name. The people of that country call themselves by some other name. So we are saying, why should we call ourselves by the same name that is being used by the outsiders? We will also call ourselves Bharat. Let others call us India. इसमें क्या है? हम थोड़ी जाके यूएन में जाके केस करेंगे कि काहे हमको इंडिया बोल दिया. अजीब आर्गुमेंट है. उसका ही आर्गुमेंट उसके अगेंस्ट जा रहा है.
Civilizations have different names because different people have engaged with it. I guess we don't want to be a great civilization. We want to follow the Middle Eastern path of monotheism.
This sarcastic asshole. Look at what he's saying. I guess we don't want to engage with other people.
Different people have engaged with it. I guess we don't want to be a great civilization. We want to follow the Middle Eastern path of monotheism, one idea, one thought. We hate our plurality. We see alternate ideas as polluting, which is a Brahminical caste mindset. I guess that's the path we want to walk, and I think that's an option.
We saw a lot of these debates, Sanjeev Sanyal, also at the time when the Constituent Assembly was debating. Interestingly, it was on the 18th of September 1949. It's also on the 18th of September that the government has called the special session of parliament. We don't know what will happen on this 18th, but at that time, there were a lot of leaders who made the point that India is not the way the Indians call themselves. They call themselves Bharatiya, and therefore it is a cultural and political thing. The attempt to try and push up the use of the name Bharat, appropriate the name Bharat, and the fact that the Indian political opposition would say that because they call themselves India, which is why it's erupted in this fashion at this moment, because before this, everyone in this government and elsewhere also seemed quite comfortable with the name India. That's happened because there's a political context to this.
See, you're a political journalist, you can decide whatever you wish. The fact of the matter is, this issue was debated in the Constituent Assembly. The Constitution of India begins by saying India, that is Bharat. By the way, the Hindi version says Bharat Arthat India. So there is no debate about one word being somehow more important than the other. So my view is, why are we so emotional about the fact that the word government of Bharat is being used? So we will use it. As everybody agrees that it's all right to have different words for a certain country, as we, United Kingdom and Great Britain, Netherlands and Holland, Japan and Nippon, and so on. There are many countries with multiple names. We can also have one. My problem.
Yes. Okay. Saptarshi is saying that if you convert to Hinduism and Jainism, you will come up with you'll have to change your name. What the name they will give is also going to be a Hindu name, isn't it? That's what I'm saying. Because है तो धार्मिक संस्कृताइज्ड name only. तो नाम चेंज करके ऐसा नहीं है कि तुम समझ भी नहीं, you will mistake that person for a Hindu, right? If someone has a so-called Buddhist or Jain name. That's what I'm saying.
Problem is that somehow the use of Bharat seemed to have rankled members of the old elite. Somehow they thought that when they were reading the Constitution, I think they misread it as India that was Bharat. But they should read the Constitution. It says India that is Bharat.
Fascinating. As I said, we've already recorded our answers with Devdutt Patnaik before this. Sanjeev was live with us on this broadcast. But what was very essential and important is that we got to hear both strands of thoughts, because they come from very different positions on the spectrum. But it's important to have heard both points of view. We also got some nuance and context into the origins of both India and Bharat, and the shades of differences between these interpretations. So I want to thank Devdutt Patnaik and Sanjeev Sanyal for joining me.
Okay, so we got something wrong. He was not saying any of those things to Sanjeev Sanyal. Sanjeev Sanyal was not live at the same time as he. His face was on loop. That's why he was smiling creepily at the entire time. Okay, now let's check some comments. So you see, every argument that came from Sanjeev Sanyal's side, which was basically framed by the anchor also, all that was discarded as Brahmanism or Brahminical sources. Yeah, the number of fallacies he did, this was insane. Yes, every debate has to go to casteism directly. महावीर जैन तीर्थंकर का नाम था और हनुमान जी को भी कहते हैं. Yes. No, I did not watch Toby yet because Toby did not release in Kolkata. If it comes on, when it comes on some OTT platform, or preferably on Netflix, etc., or maybe Amazon, then I'll watch it. Okay, then that's the end of our live stream, guys. Good night. Tomorrow, most probably, we are coming back again with probably a Bengali live stream now. बहुत दिन हो गया है. Tomorrow, if we do it, it will be probably a Bengali live stream, and we will discuss Bangali Itihash, unless something like crazy like this happens again. Okay. Good night then, guys.